Imagine floating effortlessly above a glowing azure ribbon that separates the breathing world you have always known from an absolute silent void. Down below, the fragile cradle of humanity pulses with a warm, interconnected tapestry of golden city lights, tracing the hidden contours of darkened continents. If we were to look closer at this delicate boundary, we would see massive swirling weather systems suspended like microscopic dust motes beneath a glassy, protective atmospheric shell. Picture the frozen, forgotten fringes of the solar system, where ancient time capsules of primordial ice and silicate drift through a realm of pitch black. These cometary wanderers silently carry the original pristine blueprints of our celestial neighbourhood, flawlessly preserved in a state of absolute cryogenic suspension for eons. Surprisingly, as these dark ghosts plunge toward the warmth of the inner hearth, they awaken from their deep slumber to paint the night with magnificent glowing tails of ionized gas. This cosmic structure we call the observable universe holds an even deeper, more profound secret, one where the very act of seeing becomes a literal journey backward through time. Because the speed of light is a finite and unbreakable cosmic limit, gazing into the velvet silence of the galaxy means watching ancient history unfold directly in the present moment. We are physically catching the fading, stretched light of the earlier stars, witnessing the grand dawn of creation from the quiet comfort of the modern night. You're entirely safe to leave the heavy burdens of the waking world behind and surrender to this grand, slow-motion voyage through the deep dark. These wonders are yours to inherit as you sleep, a vast and peaceful legacy composed of ancient stardust and gentle gravity. Allow the lingering tension in your muscles to melt completely into the mattress beneath you, knowing that the cosmos is holding your resting form securely in its quiet, eternal rhythm. Our majestic exploration begins not at the terrifying edge of infinity, but just a few hundred miles above the familiar, comforting surface of home. The physical transition from the terrestrial sky to the celestial ocean is breathtakingly immediate, wrapping the lone observer in a sudden, beautiful isolation. Deep within the secure metallic confines of the orbital station, the soft, rhythmic hum of life support systems provides a constant, reassuring heartbeat against the profound silence of the vacuum just inches away. Deep within the secure metallic confines of the orbital station, the soft, rhythmic hum of life support systems provides a constant, reassuring heartbeat against the profound silence of the vacuum just inches away. Gazing downward through the reinforced quartz glass, the true fragility of our existence becomes immediately apparent. The Earth does not fade gently into the blackness of space, but is instead wrapped in a shockingly thin, glowing blue ribbon that separates everything we have ever known from the absolute void. This luminous atmospheric edge bends along the curvature of the planet, catching the harsh light of the sun and scattering it into a brilliant azure halo. If we were to look closer, we would see massive weather systems swirling like microscopic dust motes, trapped beneath this delicate glassy shell. The silent expanse stretching out beyond this vibrant barrier serves as a stark reminder of the sheer isolation of our pale blue dot. Within the humming module, an observer is suspended between the vibrant, breathing cradle of life below and the infinite, soundless depths above, trapped in a delicate equilibrium. Orbiting at velocities exceeding 17,000 miles per hour, the traditional concept of a 24-hour day completely unravels into a rapid, hypnotic cycle of blinding light and utter shadow. The station hurtles relentlessly through the darkness of the Earth's shadow, enveloped in the quiet chill of the void, until the horizon suddenly ignites with an explosive arc of colour. A mesmerising sunrise bursts across the curvature of the planet every 90 minutes, flooding the confined cabin with intense, brilliant light that strips away the darkness in an instant. This rapid-fire sequence of dawns transforms the steady passage of time into a visual symphony of shifting hues, moving from deep violet to burning gold in mere seconds. Picture the sheer psychological disorientation of experiencing 16 distinct mornings and evenings within a single waking period. The rhythmic hum of the ventilation fans remains the only steady anchor of time passing, as the universe outside flickers relentlessly like a cosmic strobe light. As the glaring sun disappears once again behind the planet's vast bulk, the sudden plunge back into absolute darkness dramatically resets this breathtaking celestial clock. Surprisingly, the universe outside the thin aluminum walls is a chaotic arena of high-speed projectiles and invisible hazards. Countless micrometeoroids and tiny fragments of orbital debris constantly pepper the exterior of the spacecraft, travelling at terrifying velocities that would easily shatter earthly armour in an instant. Yet, the absolute vacuum of space completely strips these violent microscopic impacts of their voice, ensuring that every devastating collision remains eerily and completely silent. A piece of ancient cometary dust striking a solar panel with the explosive force of a high-powered rifle bullet creates no echo, no metallic crash, and no sonic boom. The soft hum of the environmental control systems inside the pressurized module is never once interrupted by the relentless kinetic bombardment occurring mere inches away from the crew. This profound sensory disconnect creates a surreal, dreamlike environment where immense destructive energy is violently discharged in total secrecy. To watch a tiny impact crater spontaneously form on an exterior metal handrail without a single whisper of sound highlights the terrifying, mute hostility of the dark environment lurking just outside the airlock. Beyond the visual wonders of orbit, the human senses occasionally capture strange, lingering echoes of the vacuum when astronauts return from grueling extravehicular spacewalks. As the airlock slowly repressurizes and the heavy, insulated outer suits are finally removed, a distinct and highly pungent odor abruptly floods the sterile, humming interior of the station. Curiously, the smell of space clinging tenaciously to the exterior fabrics deeply resembles a harsh, acrid mixture of seared steak, hot metal, and noxious welding fumes. This unexpected metallic bouquet is actually the result of high-energy atomic oxygen clinging to the spacesuits, chemically reacting with the newly introduced oxygen-rich cabin air. It is as if the violent irradiated emptiness of the solar system possesses a unique signature scent, a burnt metallic remnant of harsh stellar radiation and rapidly decaying molecules. This transient, sharp aroma offers a brief, deeply visceral connection to the brutal conditions endured just beyond the comforting safety of the pressurized hull. Once the heavy-duty ventilation systems scrub the air completely clean, the scent vanishes entirely, leaving behind only the clinical neutrality of the life support atmosphere. This cosmic structure we call the magnetosphere acts as an invisible, colossal shield, catching the violent, highly charged particles hurled outward by the sun's frequent and temperamental storms. When these powerful solar winds violently strike our planet's magnetic field, they are funneled toward the northern and southern poles in a spectacular display of silent atmospheric alchemy. Looking down from the elevated vantage point of low Earth orbit, massive rivers of shimmering green and brilliant purple light can be seen dancing furiously across the darkened polar caps. These towering auroras do not merely flicker, they continuously writhe and twist like colossal living serpents of glowing plasma miles beneath the quiet, steady hum of the space station. Notice how the glowing bands ripple in immense slow-motion waves, tracing the complex, unseen magnetic fault lines of the Earth directly against the black canvas of the night side. The sheer planetary scale of these immense electrical storms is profoundly humbling, often stretching across entire polar continents in a breathtaking, ghostly glow of highly ionized oxygen and nitrogen. Above this vibrant, swirling chaos, the vacuum remains completely indifferent, maintaining its cold, soundless grip. As the relentless orbital trajectory carries the station directly over the night side of the Earth, a magnificent, entirely artificial constellation slowly reveals itself upon the shadowed continents below. city lights brilliantly trace the delicate, sprawling veins of human civilization, glowing with a warm, amber brilliance that flawlessly maps the hidden contours of jagged coastlines and winding river valleys. From this extraordinary altitude, rigid national borders vanish entirely from view, immediately replaced by a continuous, highly interconnected web of electrical energy that pulses like a massive glowing nervous system. Vast, impenetrable, dark expanses of deep oceans and empty deserts stand in stark, dramatic contrast to the brilliant, densely clustered nodes of towering metropolitan megacities. The soft, rhythmic hum of the life support systems provides a steady, comforting soundtrack to this silent observation of humanity's sprawling footprint on the darkened globe. It is a profoundly moving realization that every single glowing dot represents millions of fragile lives, ancient histories, and daily struggles, all compressed into a single breathtaking network of illumination. This shimmering tapestry of golden light stands as a beautiful testament to our collective presence. Floating effortlessly within the brightly lit pressurized modules, the human body undergoes subtle, immediate transformations as the relentless, crushing pull of gravity is suddenly removed from the equation. Without the constant, invisible terrestrial weight heavily compressing the delicate vertebrae of the spine, the soft cartilaginous discs between them naturally begin to expand and swell with internal fluid. Over the course of a few short weeks in orbit, an astronaut's physical frame actually elongates significantly, causing them to physically grow up to 2 inches taller in the prevailing microgravity environment. This bizarre, silent stretching is frequently accompanied by a dull, throbbing backache as the complex nervous system desperately attempts to recalibrate to this sudden, unexpected freedom from Earth's heavy anchor. Picture the incredibly strange sensation of suddenly outgrowing your carefully tailored spacesuit, simply because the entire universe has abruptly stopped pressing down upon your shoulders. Fluids also shift relentlessly upward into the chest and head, heavily puffing out faces and further altering the basic, familiar physiology of the orbiting crew members. Amidst the continuous, gentle hum of the ventilation fans, the human form silently and miraculously adapts. If we were to look much closer at the bizarre behavior of simple fluids in orbit, the underlying magic of microgravity transforms mundane earthly physics into an enchanting floating ballet. When a plastic pouch of drinking water is accidentally squeezed a fraction too hard, the escaping clear liquid does not rapidly fall or violently splatter against the metallic deck. Instead, simple surface tension completely takes over the interaction, powerfully pulling the suspended droplets into perfect, shimmering, violently floating spheres of crystal-clear, trembling water. These pristine, flawless liquid orbs drift lazily and unpredictably through the cabin air, optically magnifying the surrounding complex equipment and glowing beautifully under the harsh, white artificial lighting. They wobble and endlessly oscillate with the slightest physical disturbance, reacting instantly to the tiny invisible air currents generated by the life support system's rhythmic, endless hum. To successfully consume one, an astronaut must gently glide forward and smoothly catch the drifting sphere out of the air, a surreal, graceful reversal of how a simple drink behaves on Earth. It is a truly mesmerizing everyday demonstration of how the fundamental forces of nature elegantly manifest. Tucked securely away on the nadir side of the sprawling orbital station, a remarkable, highly specialized architectural marvel known as the cupola offers the ultimate quiet sanctuary for profound reflection. This extremely small, dome-shaped observation deck features 7 heavily reinforced quartz windows, explicitly designed to provide an expansive, completely uninterrupted panoramic view of the majestic rotating planet far beneath. Floating freely within this serene, glassy isolation, an astronaut can carefully brace themselves against the metal handrails and simply surrender to the overwhelming, hypnotic visual majesty of the Earth rolling silently by. The quiet, ever-present hum of the station somehow seems to gently fade away in here, easily overpowered by the sheer planetary scale of the swirling white hurricanes, vast orange deserts, and deep blue oceans aggressively filling the entire field of vision. Imagine spending a deeply profound hour suspended in this fragile glass bubble, completely physically detached from the terrestrial world, yet intimately watching its every slow breath and subtle, shifting seasonal change across the continents. It is a profoundly moving place where the crushing infinite vastness of the cosmos directly meets the delicate vulnerability of home, turning our weary gaze permanently away from the brightly lit planet and peering outward into the deep, endless cosmic void reveals a firmament fundamentally altered by the absolute lack of an atmosphere. On Earth, the thick, continuously turbulent blanket of air severely bends and heavily distorts all incoming starlight, causing the highly familiar romantic twinkling we've observed from the surface since the very dawn of humanity. Beyond this painfully thin veil of atmospheric gas, however, the distant stars finally appear as hard, perfectly steady points of piercing, icy light that stubbornly refuse to waver or blink. The absolute terrifying clarity of the surrounding vacuum ensures that the distant Milky Way burns with a cold, intense fury, strongly resembling a brilliant glowing river of crushed diamonds carelessly spilled across a massive field of pitch-black obsidian. This unwavering, deeply piercing stellar gaze sharply highlights the highly sterile, unforgiving nature of the environment, lurking just outside the thin, quietly humming aluminum walls of the orbital outpost. Notice the profound, deeply unsettling stillness of these distant suns, burning silently across unimaginable empty gulfs of space. Crossing those unimaginable empty gulfs of space brings us to a pristine realm where that profound stillness is etched permanently into the very ground itself. The blinding silver dust of the lunar surface acts as an eternal, flawless canvas, completely undisturbed by even the faintest whisper of wind or atmospheric weather. Upon this desolate sanctuary, the heavy treaded footprints left behind by early explorers sit exactly as they were pressed into the powdery soil over half a century ago. Without a rushing atmosphere to erode their crisp edges or falling rain to wash their shallow depths away, these fragile human marks will easily endure for millions of years. They stand in dramatic, silent defiance of the normal decay of time, frozen monuments capturing a fleeting, monumental moment of historic exploration. The absolute lack of atmospheric friction ensures that not a single grain of grey dust shifts from its resting place without a direct physical disturbance. This ultimate geological preservation turns a bleak, barren wasteland into a quiet, enduring museum of our earliest celestial steps. To gaze upon those perfect, immortal impressions is to confront a landscape that stubbornly refuses to change, trapped in a breathtaking state of suspended animation. Beneath this seemingly frozen, unchanging exterior, however, a hidden, rhythmic tension constantly trembles through the crust. Subtle, deep-seated vibrations known as moon quakes regularly fracture the silence of the subterranean rock, driven by the relentless, invisible tidal pull of our massive homeworld. These subterranean tremors are not born from grinding tectonic plates, but rather from the literal flexing and stretching of the entire satellite as it slowly traces its orbital path. As the gravitational grip of its host planet tightens and releases, the brittle grey rock groans under immense structural stress. These rhythmic quakes can ring continuously for hours at a time, echoing through the highly fractured, dry interior like a struck bell hanging in an absolute vacuum. Deep within the core, these seismic whispers map out an intricate network of ancient faults and deep fractures left over from an era of violent cosmic collisions. Surprisingly, this gentle, internal vibrating reveals that the silver companion above is not a completely dead, inert stone, but a body still physically reacting to the complex gravitational dance of our local system. Allow your own muscles to loosen slightly, feeling the steady, reassuring weight of your body resting completely at peace, far removed from these cosmic tensions. This intimate gravitational embrace has ultimately resulted in a fascinating cosmic phenomenon known as tidal locking, forever altering our terrestrial perspective of the glowing sphere. Over countless millennia, the heavier gravitational drag has gradually and perfectly synchronized the satellite's rotation with its orbital period, forcing it to spin exactly once for every single lap it completes. Consequently, an entire half of this magnificent dusty world remains eternally hidden from our upward gaze, permanently turned away toward the vast, dark ocean of the outer solar system. The mythical far side exists as a completely alien hemisphere, devoid of the familiar dark planes we know so well, and instead heavily scarred by an endless, chaotic battering of ancient asteroid impacts. For the vast majority of human history, the rugged mountains and deep valleys of this hidden face were the absolute greatest mystery of the night sky, completely inaccessible to any ground-based observer. It was only with the advent of deep space probes slipping quietly around the Terminator line that this battered, secret landscape was finally illuminated and meticulously mapped. Knowing that such a massive silent continent permanently hides just out of sight completely transforms our understanding of the glowing silver disk. It is a striking reminder that the universe frequently conceals its most profound secrets, just barely beyond the limits of our natural perception. If we were to look much closer at the blinding silver dust that heavily blankets this hidden landscape, a harsh and surprising reality immediately reveals itself. The jagged regolith is not composed of soft, powdery sand, but rather is densely packed with incredibly sharp, microscopic glass shards forged by eons of violent meteorite impacts. When a high-speed projectile slams relentlessly into the airless surface, the immense kinetic energy instantly melts the surrounding rock, blasting molten droplets high into the dark sky. To walk across these ancient silent plains is to literally wade through a shimmering microscopic sea of shattered glass, a beautiful but highly treacherous remnant of the solar system's violently chaotic youth. The gleaming silver aesthetic of the cratered landscape entirely masks a profoundly unforgiving, abrasive physical reality. Occasionally the precise orbital clockwork aligns in such a way that the glowing silver sphere slips entirely into the deep, conical shadow cast by its host planet. During a total celestial eclipse, the blinding white glare is abruptly extinguished, dramatically replaced by an eerie, deeply profound, and brilliant crimson glow that gently bathes the desolate plains. This stunning transformation is not caused by the satellite itself, but by the miraculous bending of sunlight aggressively filtering through the thin, dusty atmospheric halo of the world below. The red hue painting the grey dust is actually the majestic combined projection of every single sunrise and sunset simultaneously occurring across the terrestrial globe. Picture standing within the utter silence of a deep ancient crater, entirely illuminated by the perfectly focused collective light of billions of people experiencing their morning dawns and evening dusks at once. This fleeting copper-coloured bath of light serves as a hauntingly beautiful, transient connection between the vibrant, breathing world and its completely sterile, silent companion. As your breathing slows into a comfortable, even rhythm, imagine the cool, steady quiet of that crimson-lit landscape mirroring your own deep state of relaxation. The blood-red glow slowly recedes as the celestial mechanics press endlessly onward, returning the landscape to its stark monochromatic brilliance. Returning to the familiar illuminated hemisphere, the massive dark grey patches that boldly decorate the glowing surface tell a violent tale of ancient geological fury. These sprawling flat regions, affectionately dubbed seas by early astronomers, are actually immense, solidified plains of dark basaltic lava that erupted billions of years ago. Following catastrophic, planet-shattering collisions with massive asteroids, the heavily fractured crust allowed deep subterranean magma to violently bleed out and rapidly flood the sprawling impact basins. As this molten rock slowly cooled and crystallized over countless millennia, it formed the vast, smooth and heavily pigmented plains that we now easily recognize from below as a friendly, familiar face. The stark, contrasting albedo between these dark, iron-rich seas and the much brighter, heavily cratered ancient highlands creates the beautiful, permanent tapestry we observe every single night. These frozen oceans of volcanic glass stand as silent, sweeping monuments to an incredibly turbulent, fiery epoch when the entire surface was a glowing, molten hellscape. Today, they offer the safest, most level landing zones for fragile robotic explorers seeking to gently touch down amidst the deep, treacherous shadows and towering, jagged peaks. The illusion of water is entirely shattered upon closer inspection, revealing only an endless, petrified expanse of dark, frozen stone. Far to the extreme north and south of these ancient lava seas, the terrain becomes intensely rugged, plunging into the profound darkness of deep, permanently shadowed polar craters. Because the satellite's axis of rotation is barely tilted relative to the incoming rays of the sun, the illuminating light can only graze the jagged rims of these deep polar depressions, never once reaching the incredibly steep sunken floors. Within these eternal pitch-black abysses, the temperature plummets to terrifying, unimaginable depths, remaining consistently colder than the distant frozen surface of Pluto. These abyssal cold traps have quietly served as cosmic freezers for billions of years, successfully capturing and perfectly preserving ancient volatile molecules delivered by violently crashing comets. Massive hidden deposits of pristine water ice lie heavily mixed within the sharp, glass-like regolith, entirely protected from the harsh, sublimating glare of the local star. Discovering this hidden, frozen ocean entirely rewrites our understanding of the barren landscape, transforming it from a completely desiccated stone into a highly crucial oasis for future deep space voyages. The stark contrast between the blinding, irradiated rims and the crushing, freezing darkness below creates an environment of terrifying extremes, entirely unwelcoming to fragile organic life. Yet those hidden, frozen depths hold the very molecular keys necessary to eventually unlock the broader, deeper mysteries of the outer solar system. Standing amidst the blindingly bright, sunlit dust of the highlands, an observer would experience a profoundly jarring, deeply disorienting visual paradox when simply tilting their head upward. Despite the overwhelming harsh glare of the unfiltered sun intensely cooking the grey soil below, the vast, sweeping sky above remains a terrifying, bottomless pitch black. The stark absence of any atmospheric gases means there are absolutely no molecules available to scatter the incoming solar wavelengths into a familiar, comforting blue canopy. Consequently, the brilliant burning local star hangs aggressively suspended in a sky darker than the deepest midnight, sharing the identical celestial vault with thousands of faint, unwinking distant suns. Shadows cast by the towering, jagged crater rims are incredibly sharp and perfectly absolute, creating pools of completely impenetrable darkness directly adjacent to blindingly bright, illuminated plains. This dramatic, high-contrast environment strips away all visual depth perception, making it entirely impossible to accurately judge the true distance of a rolling hill or a deep ravine. The daytime darkness serves as a relentless visual reminder that this landscape is entirely exposed to the brutal, unforgiving vacuum, offering absolutely no protective embrace against the cold void. Let the tension drain fully from your shoulders, safely cocooned in a space where the air gently buffers the world, far removed from that harsh, airless reality. This silent, dusty companion does not merely hang passively in the dark sky, it actively and continuously shapes the fundamental experience of time back on the vibrant world below. The invisible elastic bands of gravity connecting the two celestial bodies are engaged in a slow, relentless, and highly complex exchange of rotational momentum over billions of years. As the massive terrestrial oceans bulge outward in response to this pulling force, the resulting tidal friction acts as an incredibly subtle, massive brake on the planet's daily spin. Consequently, the days on our homeworld are slowly, imperceptibly lengthening by a microscopic fraction of a millisecond with every passing century. Simultaneously, to strictly conserve the total angular momentum of the system, the glowing silver disk is very slowly but surely spiraling further and further away into the deep outer dark. When the very first fragile life forms emerged in the primordial oceans, the satellite loomed massively larger in the sky, and a single day flashed by in a mere fraction of its current length. This grand, invisible clockwork demonstrates an intimate, deeply mechanical relationship where the physical mass of one body directly dictates the temporal reality of the other. The celestial waltz is infinitely slow, deeply majestic, and entirely unstoppable. Turning completely away from the jagged, blindingly bright horizon of this barren sanctuary, a solitary observer is immediately confronted with the most awe-inspiring, deeply humbling sight in the entire cosmos. Suspended flawlessly against the infinite, terrifying blackness of the void is a delicate, fragile sphere of vibrant, swirling blues and brilliant, blinding whites. Gazing back at the pale blue dot from this dusty, deeply silent vantage point violently strips away all trivial terrestrial concerns, revealing the absolute, terrifying isolation of our collective existence. From this immense, quiet distance, the entire sum of human history, every soaring triumph and every agonizing defeat, is completely compressed into a single, breathtakingly tiny pixel of glowing light. The stark, dead grey dust completely surrounding your boots stands in the most dramatic, poignant contrast to the lush, breathing oasis hanging silently in the endless dark above. This specific, profound perspective shifts the mind permanently, forging a deep, unshakable realization of how incredibly rare and fiercely precious that single, fragile spark of life truly is. The universe simply continues its silent, cold expansion in every direction, completely indifferent to the tiny, beautiful miracle warmly sheltered beneath that thin atmospheric ribbon. It is the ultimate quiet realization of our true place in the grand, sweeping architecture of the cosmos. This grand, sweeping architecture of the cosmos finds its most profound local anchor in a colossal, violently radiating gravitational master that effortlessly holds the entire surrounding system together. Our closest star is an unimaginably vast, eternally churning ocean of incandescent plasma, so staggeringly dense and overwhelmingly massive that it contains roughly 99% of all the physical matter within our planetary neighbourhood. The staggering gravity of this celestial titan completely dominates the surrounding space, warping the fabric of reality into a deep, inescapable well. Everything else that exists, every wandering icy comet, every sweeping gas giant and every rocky terrestrial sphere, is merely a microscopic rounding error when compared to this overwhelming, burning central weight. This magnificent golden hearth continuously dictates the silent, sweeping elliptical orbits of every single celestial body, gracefully guiding their paths through the otherwise lawless, freezing dark. To fully comprehend its terrifying scale is to realize that over 1 million worlds the exact size of our own could easily fit within its boiling spherical boundary without ever touching the fiery edges. It stands as the absolute undisputed monarch of our local region, aggressively yet beautifully warming the deeply cold void with an eternal, steady and brilliant embrace. Deep within the crushing, unfathomable depths of this golden sphere, internal conditions reach a terrifying extreme of physical pressure and blinding temperature completely alien to our peaceful everyday existence. Here, The relentless inward crush of its own immense gravity aggressively forces individual hydrogen atoms to violently smash together, fusing their microscopic cores to forge slightly heavier helium elements. This profound, continuous thermonuclear alchemy miraculously releases staggering, incomprehensible amounts of pure, blinding, radiant energy directly into the dark, frozen expanse of the surrounding solar system. It is an eternal, perfectly contained explosion of breathtaking magnitude, furiously burning for billions of years without ever consuming a single breath of oxygen or producing a single ounce of ash. The resulting outward pressure from this furious atomic dance perfectly counterbalances the massive gravitational weight pressing heavily inward, miraculously maintaining a delicate, incredibly precise structural equilibrium. This silent, invisible, and ancient war intimately fought between crushing gravity and explosive nuclear fusion is the very engine that powerfully sustains the gentle, life-giving light we rely upon. The very core of our system is a beautiful paradox of sheer violence, creating the ultimate peaceful serenity across the vast orbital distances. Surprisingly, the brilliant searing energy forged in that hellish central furnace does not immediately escape into the waiting, frictionless vacuum of interplanetary space. A newly born photon of pure light must embark on an agonizingly slow, deeply chaotic and turbulent migration outward through the densely packed, violently boiling layers of the stellar interior. This microscopic packet of energy bounces relentlessly off tightly packed protons and swirling electrons, taking an infinitely complex, random and jagged path known by physicists as a drunken walk. Because the internal plasma is so unimaginably thick, it can easily take hundreds of thousands of years for a single, struggling photon to finally fight its way from the crushing core to the bubbling outer surface. The ancient golden light illuminating your immediate surroundings right now was actually born long before the very first modern human ancestors ever walked upright across the primeval savannas. Feel the quiet, steady rhythm of your own breath, observing a calm, gentle rise and fall in the present moment, intimately warmed by ancient stellar energy, finally set completely free. You're physically absorbing a deeply ancient history with every gentle ray of sunshine that softly graces your resting skin. Once this ancient, struggling light finally breaches the chaotic, violently bubbling photosphere, it bursts instantly outward into the pristine, frictionless vacuum at the absolute, unbreakable speed limit of the universe. Escaping the heavy, clutching gravitational grasp of its intense birthplace, the radiant energy silently streaks across the deeply frozen interplanetary void in a flawless, perfectly straight and unwavering line. The absolute emptiness of the cosmic medium offers zero resistance, allowing the brilliant rays to aggressively slice through the profound darkness without losing a single fraction of their intense momentum. This final, unhindered, and glorious sprint smoothly covers tens of millions of miles in just a brief, staggering 8-minute span before gently making physical contact with a solid planetary surface. When you step outside and immediately feel the comforting, familiar golden warmth of the sun resting softly against your face, you are physically intercepting a deeply ancient traveller at the exact terminal end of its epic journey. That momentary, soothing sensation of heat is the final, graceful transfer of thermonuclear energy, forged eons ago in the crushing dark, delivered flawlessly across the deeply silent abyss. The universe constantly reaches out across unimaginable, freezing distances just to gently touch the quiet, waking world with an intimate, radiant kiss. If we were to look much closer at the glowing, seemingly perfect and featureless surface of this stellar hearth, a violently active, magnetically tangled and deeply complex reality quickly emerges. Immense, endlessly twisting magnetic fields continuously boil up from the deep, unseen interior, occasionally piercing the glowing photosphere to create spectacular, localized, and terrifying tempests of trapped superheated plasma. These intense, deeply knotted magnetic loops aggressively inhibit the normal healthy flow of convective heat rising from the furnace below, creating massive temporary blemishes across the burning face. Appearing starkly dark against the surrounding blinding brilliance, these churning, slightly cooler regions are known simply as sunspots, and they proudly map the shifting, cyclical moods of our local star. A single one of these dark, churning voids is often large enough to easily swallow an entire rocky planet whole without leaving a single trace. Despite appearing as dark, dead, and quiet patches, they are actually intensely energetic, fiercely active zones radiating with terrifying, pent-up magnetic fury, waiting desperately to snap. They serve as beautiful, temporary freckles on the face of our star, continuously revealing its complex, deeply hidden, and shifting magnetic heartbeat to anyone observing from afar. Notice that this magnificent, burning sphere does not end with a solid, definitive edge, but rather constantly exhales a continuous, invisible breath that sweeps through the entire planetary system. A relentless, high-speed stream of electrically charged particles constantly boils off the outermost superheated atmosphere, rushing aggressively outward in all directions to fill the seemingly empty vacuum. This rushing, invisible tempest is known as the solar wind, and it forcefully sculpts the glowing tails of passing comets and violently bends the invisible magnetic fields of the orbiting worlds. It constantly exerts a subtle, sweeping pressure on absolutely everything it touches, violently bathing the rocky inner planets in a never-ending drizzle of highly energized electrons and fast-moving protons. Over deep, unfathomable cosmic timescales, this relentless, invisible gale slowly strips away the unprotected atmospheres of dead worlds, heavily shaping the geological and chemical evolutions of our neighbouring rocky spheres. Allow the steady, heavy relaxation in your resting limbs to deepen even further, feeling safely and perfectly insulated from these wild, charged currents rushing silently through the outer dark. You're comfortably anchored in a tranquil, protected space, entirely shielded while the local star continuously exhales its invisible, sweeping and powerful gale across the void. Periodically, the tightly coiled, invisible magnetic fault lines deeply anchored in those dark, churning sunspots become unbearably twisted, eventually snapping and violently reconnecting in a brilliant, blinding flash of sheer energy. When this invisible, mounting tension finally breaks, the glowing outer atmosphere violently unleashes a terrifying, explosive wave of superheated, electrified plasma known to astronomers as a coronal mass ejection. Billions of tons of highly charged, glowing stellar matter are violently hurled into the deep void, rapidly expanding outward like an immense, completely silent tsunami of pure magnetic fury. These colossal, magnificent eruptions ripple chaotically across the interplanetary medium, dramatically disturbing the quiet, steady flow of the normal solar wind and sending shockwaves deep into the outer system. If one of these colossal magnetic storms happens to directly wash over a sheltered, rocky world, it instantly triggers magnificent, glowing auroral displays while deeply shaking the protective, invisible magnetosphere. It is a stunning, deeply humbling reminder of the sheer, untamed, and catastrophic violence actively brewing just beneath that gentle, familiar, and life-giving golden facade. The delicate balance of our peaceful existence relies entirely on weathering these spectacular, silent tempests, erupting from the heart of our cosmic neighbourhood. Beneath the violent, endlessly erupting canopy of the outer corona, the entire vast spherical mass is continuously vibrating with a deep, hidden, and profoundly musical internal rhythm. Immense, deeply turbulent convection currents violently boiling near the outer surface constantly generate powerful, low-frequency acoustic waves that plunge deeply downward into the dense, pressurized interior, These continuous rolling and massive sound waves violently bounce and refract through the varying distinct layers of superheated plasma, causing the entire stellar body to rhythmically expand and gently contract. Because of this continuous acoustic bouncing, the colossal golden sphere literally rings exactly like a massive, deeply complex and resonant bell, continuously echoing with millions of different frequencies simultaneously. Though absolutely silent in the surrounding frictionless vacuum of space, this internal churning and beautiful symphony allows careful observers to peer invisibly deep into the star's violently hidden, crushing core. The relentless seething heartbeat of the solar furnace is mathematically encoded in these slow, majestic, and completely silent surface ripples continuously washing across the photosphere. It is a stunning realization that the brightest object in our sky is essentially a massive ringing instrument playing a song that lasts for 10 billion years. This magnificent, aggressively radiating influence extends far beyond the most distant, frozen planetary bodies, eventually colliding head-on with the harsh, unforgiving currents of the broader, deeper interstellar ocean. The outward, relentless pressure of the continuous solar wind forcefully carves out a colossal, teardrop-shaped magnetic bubble known as the heliosphere, which completely and safely encapsulates our entire local neighbourhood. This vast, invisible and powerful shield bravely pushes back against the deeply cold, highly irradiated plasma continuously drifting between the distant, ancient stellar systems of the wider galaxy. It acts as an immense, heavily fortified and deeply protective cocoon, safely shielding the fragile inner planets from the most devastating high-energy cosmic rays constantly raining down from ancient exploding supernovas. Without this vital, invisible boundary standing firm in the deep dark, the harsh radiation of the wider cosmos would continuously sterilize the inner solar system, completely erasing any chance of fragile complexity. As your body sinks heavier into the comfortable support beneath you, imagine this colossal, sweeping magnetic envelope standing silent, eternal guard at the very outer fringes of our system. It is a deeply comforting, invisible border wall made entirely of pure energy, softly and relentlessly repelling the terrifying harshness of the deeper, older universe. Billions of years from now, the delicate, perfectly tuned equilibrium powerfully sustaining this bright golden hearth will inevitably falter as the crushing core finally exhausts its primordial hydrogen fuel. Without the outward pressure of fusion, gravity will aggressively crush the dying center, violently forcing the outer atmospheric layers to furiously expand outward in a devastating, brilliant and terrifying ruby glow. This dramatic, terrifying metamorphosis will permanently transform our familiar, steady companion into a monstrous, dying red giant, easily swelling large enough to completely and mercilessly engulf the inner rocky planets. The gentle, life-giving warmth we intimately rely upon will rapidly shift into an all-consuming fiery embrace, returning the fragile, deeply ancient terrestrial rocks back into raw, boiling, and formless plasma. Yet, this violent, deeply dramatic and apocalyptic conclusion is merely another necessary, beautiful verse in the grand, sweeping cycle of cosmic creation and inevitable stellar rebirth. Eventually, the swollen, glowing red canopy will beautifully drift away into the dark, seeding the void with new elements, while leaving behind a tiny, glowing white ember to quietly illuminate the empty, reshaped void. It is the ultimate poetic reminder that even the most eternal, steadfast anchors of the sky are actively participating in a slow, magnificent journey of transformation. This journey of transformation leads us away from the central fire toward the scorched, iron-rich shores of the smallest inner world, a place where the sun's proximity dictates a life of brutal, alternating extremes. Because this tiny planet lacks a substantial atmosphere to trap or distribute heat, it exists in a state of constant, violent thermal whiplash that would shatter any terrestrial material. During the long, slow daytime, the surface is baked under an unrelenting solar glare that sends temperatures soaring to a lead-melting 800 degrees Fahrenheit. Yet, as soon as the sun slips below the jagged, airless horizon, the stored heat vanishes instantly into the radiation-chilled void, causing the ground to freeze in a terrifying plunge toward nearly 300 degrees below zero. This dramatic, silent oscillation creates a landscape of deep, cracked craters and ancient volcanic plains that have never known the softening touch of wind or rain. The planet sits like a battered metallic cinder, enduring the most extreme temperature fluctuations found anywhere in the solar system's rocky family. It is a world of absolute unblinking contrast, where one can stand in a shadow of lethal cold while looking out across a plain of white-hot, shimmering dust. Such a stark existence highlights the profound protective embrace of the thin blue atmospheric ribbon we left behind, which gracefully buffers us from these jagged cosmic shifts. Deep within the suffocating lemon-hued clouds of our sister planet, a strange and ponderous clockwork defies all terrestrial logic, spinning in a direction that contradicts almost every other body in the system. While most planets rotate in a common alignment, this veiled world turns slowly backward, causing the sun to rise in the west and set in the east over a horizon choked by crushing pressure. This retrograde motion is so incredibly sluggish that the planet completes a full journey around the sun before it manages to finish a single rotation on its own axis. Consequently, a single solar day on this sweltering world actually lasts longer than an entire local year, creating a temporal paradox that stretches the perception of time into an endless golden-tinted crawl. The thick acidic atmosphere moves 60 times faster than the solid ground beneath it, whipping around the planet in a continuous high-speed carousel of sulfuric clouds. This dense, opaque canopy traps the sun's heat with such efficiency that the surface remains a uniform, glowing hellscape, regardless of the slow, backwards-turning time. Beneath this weight, the landscape is a parched expanse of ancient volcanic shield volcanoes and vast, rippling plains of orange-tinted basalt. To stand here would be to experience time not as a fleeting sequence of hours, but as a heavy, stagnant ocean that barely moves against the backdrop of the stars. If we were to look closer at the dusty, oxidized horizons of the red planet, the familiar evening sky reveals a breathtaking optical reversal that challenges our earthly expectations of a sunset. On our homeworld, the atmosphere scatters blue light to create a cerulean sky, leaving the setting sun to glow in shades of deep amber and vibrant crimson. However, the fine, iron-rich dust suspended in the thin Martian air behaves in a completely opposite manner, scattering red light away and allowing a striking pale blue glow to pool around the sinking sun. As the sun touches the jagged silhouette of a distant crater, the surrounding sky transitions into a cool, ethereal indigo that feels profoundly alien, yet strangely serene. This blue twilight lingers for a long time in the thin air, casting long, sharp shadows across the rust-coloured dunes and silent, frozen canyons. It is a moment of quiet, chromatic magic that transforms the harsh, desiccated desert into a realm of soft pastel light and cooling shadows. Let your own breathing match this slow, Martian twilight, feeling the weight of your limbs sinking into a state of perfect, heavy stillness as the blue shadows lengthen. You're safely anchored in a moment of deep peace, observing a sunset that whispers of ancient dry oceans and the enduring patience of the stars. Beyond the asteroid belt, the true giants of the system begin to emerge, dominated by a striped colossus that harbours the most enduring and violent storm in known existence. Jupiter boasts a raging, crimson-hued anticyclonic vortex known as the Great Red Spot, a colossal atmospheric disturbance that has been churning relentlessly for at least 350 years. This massive, swirling oval is large enough to easily swallow 2 or 3 Earths whole, with winds at its outer edge screaming at hundreds of miles per hour. This is not a fleeting weather event, but a permanent feature of the planet's identity, fueled by the intense heat rising from the deep, pressurized interior. The storm's deep, brick-red colour comes from complex organic molecules and phosphorus being dredged up from the lower depths and baked by the sun's ultraviolet radiation. It sits amidst a sea of white and brown cloud bands, rotating counterclockwise like a gigantic slow-motion gear in the planet's turbulent machinery. Notice how the smaller white storms are often consumed or deflected by this massive elder vortex as they drift past its ancient churning borders. This is a storm that has outlived empires and civilizations, a testament to the staggering long-lived energies contained within the gas giants. This structure of swirling gas and liquid, despite its immense volume and golden-hued majesty, possesses a density so incredibly low that it challenges our basic understanding of planetary mass. While it is the second largest planet in the system, Saturn is composed almost entirely of the lightest elements, hydrogen and helium, packed into a vast gaseous sphere. If you were to find a terrestrial ocean, or a celestial bathtub large enough to hold this ringed giant, the entire planet would effortlessly float upon the surface, like a piece of cosmic driftwood. This fascinating property reveals that even though the planet is massive enough to exert a powerful gravitational pull, its substance is surprisingly airy and diffuse. Deep beneath the golden yellow cloud tops, the pressure eventually turns the gas into a strange metallic liquid, but the overall bulk of the world remains remarkably buoyant. This lightness gives the planet a slightly squashed appearance, as its rapid rotation causes the equator to bulge outward against the dark void. It is a world that seems to defy its own gravity, a majestic, lightweight bubble of primordial elements drifting through the cold silence of the outer system. Imagine the sheer scale of such a world, yet realizing it is as delicate and airy as a mountain of frozen sea foam. Surprisingly, the most magnificent ornament in the solar system is a masterpiece of celestial geometry that possesses almost no physical depth at all. The brilliant shimmering rings surrounding the gas giant Saturn stretch out for hundreds of thousands of miles, yet they are incredibly thin, measuring only about 30 feet thick in most places. If you were to create a scale model of these rings using a standard sheet of paper, the paper itself would be far too thick to accurately represent the true proportions of this icy disk. They're composed of billions of individual fragments of water ice and rock, ranging from microscopic dust motes to boulders the size of terrestrial houses. Each of these countless icy particles follows its own independent, perfectly circular orbit, held in a delicate, rippling sheet by the gravitational tug of the planet and its many small moons. From a distance, they appear as a solid, unbroken record of light, but up close, they're a chaotic, beautiful debris field of frozen diamonds. Allow the tension to leave your mind as you visualize this perfect, razor-thin circle of light spinning in absolute soundless harmony. Your body is resting in a place of total security, far from the shifting, icy currents of the ring plane, yet intimately connected to the rhythmic pulse of the cosmos. Tracing the outer reaches of the system reveals an azure ice giant that rolls through the dark like a fallen marble, forever tilted by an ancient, cataclysmic trauma. A massive collision in the distant past with an object at least the size of Earth knocked Uranus entirely onto its side, leaving its rotational axis pointing almost directly at the Sun. This unique, horizontal orientation causes extreme and bizarre seasonal variations, where one pole experiences 21 years of continuous blinding sunlight, followed by 21 years of absolute soul-chilling darkness. The entire planet orbits the Sun on its side, its thin, dark rings and family of moons circling it like the vertical blades of a giant celestial propeller. This sideways tilt creates a world of deep, atmospheric mystery, where the weather is driven by a seasonal cycle that spans a human lifetime. The pale, featureless blue of the methane-rich atmosphere hides a cold, slushy interior of water, ammonia and methane ice. It is a lonely, tilted wanderer, a silent witness to the violent, formative years of the solar system, when planets were regularly struck and reshaped by wandering giants. To look upon its calm, teal face is to see the enduring scars of a history that was as chaotic as it was magnificent. Deep within the cobalt blue depths of the furthest major planet, the calm appearance of the distant ice sphere masks a terrifying supersonic atmospheric fury. Neptune is home to the fastest and most violent winds recorded anywhere in the solar system, with dark, swirling storms whipping across the surface at speeds exceeding 1,200 miles per hour. These supersonic gales move faster than the speed of sound on Earth, driven by a mysterious internal heat source that provides more energy than the distant flickering sun. Because the planet has no solid surface to provide friction, these massive wind currents can flow and accelerate for centuries without ever slowing down. Huge, bright white clouds of methane ice streak across the deep azure sky, looking like delicate feathers caught in a hurricane of unimaginable proportions. These storms, such as the Great Dark Hole, appear and disappear with a suddenness that reveals the planet's volatile, high-energy nature. It is a world of cold, screaming winds and deep, dark mysteries, hanging at the very edge of the sun's gravitational kingdom. Despite the violent speed of the atmosphere, the distance from our world renders it a silent, frozen marble of deep indigo light. Surprisingly, the interior of these frigid, distant worlds harbours a phenomenon of such crystalline beauty that it feels more like a dream than a physical reality. Deep within the slushy, high-pressure mantles of the ice giants, the intense weight of thousands of miles of atmosphere aggressively compresses carbon atoms into their densest form. Under these extreme conditions, the carbon crystallizes and begins to precipitate out of the liquid gas, creating a slow, glittering rain of solid diamonds. These precious stones, ranging from tiny grains to massive boulders, drift lazily downward through the thick liquid layers of the planet like falling leaves in a forest of liquid methane. They eventually sink toward the solid core, forming a vast, crushing layer of diamond that remains hidden forever beneath the blue cloud tops. This hidden, sparkling treasure is the result of chemistry and pressure working in perfect, silent unison over billions of years of planetary cooling. As you rest, imagine the quiet, rhythmic descent of these glittering jewels through the deep, dark heart of a giant world. Your heart beats with a steady, natural ease, safely shielded from the crushing pressures that forge such magnificent gems in the deep dark. Returning to the gravitational grip of the gas giants, we find a small, sulphurous moon that remains the most geologically violent body in our solar neighbourhood. Io is caught in a brutal gravitational tug-of-war between the immense bulk of Jupiter and the neighbouring moons, causing its solid crust to flex and bulge by up to 300 feet every single day. This constant internal friction generates a staggering amount of tidal heat, which melts the interior and forces it to erupt through hundreds of active volcanoes across the surface. These eruptions are so powerful that they blast plumes of sulfur and oxygen hundreds of miles into the surrounding vacuum, painting the moon in vivid mottled shades of yellow, red and black. The landscape is being constantly resurfaced, burying ancient craters under fresh layers of cooling lava and volcanic ash in a matter of months. This moon is a chaotic, colourful world of fire and brimstone, existing in a state of permanent high-energy renewal. It is a striking contrast to the cold, dead surfaces of most other moons, a vibrant and hellish spark of activity in the frozen outer system. Standing on its scarred ground would be to witness the raw, unbridled power of gravity transformed into a spectacle of geological fury. Deep within the most frigid reaches of the cosmic suburbs, far beyond the reach of the planetary giants, dwell the ancient, silent architects of our history. These cometary wanderers are often described as dirty snowballs, though this simple name belies their status as pristine, frozen time capsules left over from the chaotic birth of our solar system billions of years ago. They're a delicate blend of primordial water ice, volatile gases, and silicate dust, preserved in a state of absolute cryogenic suspension for eons. If we were to look closer, we would see that these objects are essentially the leftover scraps from the great construction of the Sun and its family. They hold within their icy cores the chemical fingerprints of the nebula that birthed the world you now rest upon. To encounter one is to touch a piece of the universe that has remained unchanged since the beginning of time. This frozen heritage makes them invaluable witnesses to a history that preceded the existence of the very planets they now visit. They drift through the deep dark like silent ghosts of a forgotten era, carrying the original blueprint of the cosmos within their fragile, frozen hearts. Their presence is a stark, quiet contrast to the geological fury we witnessed on the inner moons, representing the peaceful, icy memory of our system's infancy. This structure of ancient ice and dust originates from a realm so distant and vast that it dwarfs the orbits of the planets we have already visited. Most of these wanderers call the Oort cloud their home, a hypothetical and colossal spherical shell of icy bodies that rests at the very outer edge of the Sun's gravitational influence. This immense reservoir of ancient ice begins thousands of times further out than the orbit of the most distant gas giants, forming a ghostly spherical boundary around our local system. It is a place of profound, nearly absolute darkness, where the Sun is nothing more than a particularly bright and unwavering star in a sea of blackness. In this silent graveyard of ice, trillions of potential comets drift in slow, majestic orbits that can take millions of years to complete. They wait in the stillness, occasionally nudged by the gravity of a passing star or the movement of the galaxy, beginning a long, slow fall toward the warmth of the inner hearth. This distant shell represents the final frontier of the Sun's domain, a massive frozen cloud that holds enough material to see countless new worlds. It is the ultimate repository of our system's oldest materials, floating in a quiet, dark equilibrium at the very edge of the abyss. As these travellers descend from the dark into the increasingly intense radiance of the inner system, the long-dormant ice begins to react to the growing heat. Solar radiation penetrates the dark, dusty crust of the comet, causing the frozen volatiles buried deep within to sublimate directly into gas without ever passing through a liquid state. This sudden transition from solid ice to vapour creates immense internal pressure, eventually forcing the gas to erupt through the surface in violent, spectacular jets that hiss into the vacuum. The quiet, frozen rock is suddenly transformed into an active, breathing entity, exhaling plumes of water vapour, carbon dioxide, and fine dust. This dramatic awakening is the first sign that the ancient traveller has finally entered the Sun's immediate domain, casting off its frozen slumber for a brief moment of activity. Feel your own body sinking deeper into the soft support beneath you, perfectly still and warm, safe from the violent, icy eruptions occurring in the deep dark. You're an observer at a safe distance, anchored in tranquility while these icy giants begin their fiery transformation. The once silent stone now hums with the energy of the Sun, shedding its frozen layers in a spectacular display of cosmic chemistry. This relentless outgassing creates a brilliant glowing atmosphere of gas and dust known as the coma, which envelops the solid, icy nucleus in a shimmering, ghostly shroud. Under the influence of solar energy, this diffuse cloud can expand to a staggering size, often becoming larger than a massive planet while the solid core remains only a few miles wide. The coma glows with reflected sunlight and the internal energy of ionized gases, turning the once dark pebble into a magnificent luminous beacon that can be seen across the void. From our distant perspective, this glowing veil appears as a soft, ethereal light cutting through the absolute blackness of the void. It is a structure of immense volume but almost no density, a celestial ghost that masks the tiny solid heart of the comet. To observe the coma is to see the comet shedding its ancient frozen skin as it prepares for its closest encounter with the central fire. This luminous halo is the first grand display of the comet's presence, signalling its arrival in the inner circles of the solar system. It is a fragile, beautiful veil that grows more vibrant with every mile the wanderer travels toward the sun. A magnificent double tail begins to form as the pressure of the solar wind and the force of radiation push the lighter particles away from the nucleus. One part of this structure is the dust tail, a broad curving trail of silicates that glows with a warm golden hue as it reflects the light of the sun. The second part is the ion tail, a much straighter and often bluish streak composed of charged gas particles that have been ionized by intense solar radiation. These two tails often separate and fan out, creating a complex flowing geometry that follows the comet's path through the stars. They are among the largest structures in our system, yet they are made of material so sparse that an entire tail could be condensed into a single suitcase of solid matter. This luminous trailing wake is a testament to the comet's rapid decay, as it pays the price for visiting the warmth of the inner system. It is a beautiful, temporary streak of light that defines the very image of these wandering spirits in our night sky. The comet becomes a celestial brush, painting a long, glowing stroke across the dark canvas of the universe. Interestingly, the orientation of these spectacular trailing streaks is not dictated by the comet's direction of travel through the vacuum. Because the tails are formed by the outward pressure of the solar wind, they always point directly away from the sun, regardless of whether the comet is moving toward or away from the central star. A comet moving away from the sun actually travels head first into its own tail, as the solar wind continuously blows the gas and dust into the deep outer dark. This counterintuitive movement creates a unique celestial ballet, where the glowing wake serves as a compass needle, always marking the exact position of the distant sun. It is a visual manifestation of the sun's invisible, far-reaching power, even over the smallest and most distant wanderers. Your heartbeat remains steady and slow, a rhythmic anchor that exists independently of the celestial winds blowing across the frozen abysses. You're resting in a place of complete stillness, watching the distant glowing wind of the sun shape the destiny of these icy travellers. The tail remains a constant, silent witness to the solar influence that dominates every corner of our planetary home. Fragments of debris shed by these passing wanderers leave behind a permanent, invisible trail of ancient dust and small pebbles along their orbital paths. When our homeworld periodically crosses through one of these dense cometary wakes, the fragments strike our atmosphere at incredible velocities, creating the spectacular annual meteor showers we enjoy from the surface. Each brilliant, fleeting streak of light across the night sky is the final, fiery gasp of a tiny piece of cometary ice that has travelled for billions of years just to find its end in our air. These showers are the gentle terrestrial echoes of a comet's long and arduous journey through the freezing voids. The dust that once rested in the Oort cloud is transformed into a brief, glowing spark of beauty, connecting our world to the most distant reaches of the system. It is a reminder that the celestial and the terrestrial are intimately linked by these ancient drifting legacies. Through these falling stars, we receive a direct physical touch from the most distant and ancient parts of our cosmic home. The night sky is briefly illuminated by the ghosts of comets past, a silent celebration of the material that built our world. If we were to look closer at the solid heart of a comet, as sophisticated robotic explorers like Rosetta have done, we would discover a landscape that is surprisingly dark and heavily scarred. Far from being a bright, pristine snowball, the nucleus is often covered in a thick soot-like layer of complex carbon compounds that reflect almost no light at all. This pitch-black crust is broken by deep, jagged craters, towering cliffs of ice, and vast, dusty plains that have been eroded by countless cycles of heating and cooling. The surface is a bizarre alien terrain where boulders the size of houses are tossed about by gas jets, and the gravity is so weak that a single leap could send an explorer drifting into space. These dark, silent worlds are among the most primitive and unaltered objects in the solar system, holding the secrets of our chemical ancestry. They represent a stark, monochromatic reality that lies hidden beneath the glorious glowing veil of the coma. To stand upon such a surface is to stand upon the very foundation of the planetary worlds, a place where time has stood still for 4 billion years. The dark, battered ground is the silent witness to the original conditions of the solar nebula. Surprisingly, the scientific analysis of these ancient icy cores has revealed the presence of complex organic molecules that are fundamental to the existence of life as we know it. Amino acids and other essential building blocks have been found preserved within the frozen interiors of these wanderers, suggesting that comets may have acted as cosmic delivery vehicles. It is theorized that billions of years ago, a relentless bombardment of these icy travelers may have seeded the young, cooling Earth with the necessary ingredients for the first biological sparks. The same materials that form the distant, frozen ghosts of the Oort cloud may be the very same materials that now circulate within your own body. Feel the weight of your resting limbs and the quiet, steady warmth of your skin, a biological miracle composed of stardust and cometary ice. You are a living testament to a cosmic chemistry that began in the dark, frozen reaches of the outer system. The silent wanderers are not just distant lights, but the ancient ancestors of our own biological existence. They are the heralds of life, carrying the molecular seeds of consciousness through the deep, frozen dark. While many of these wanderers are caught in long elliptical orbits that bring them back to the Sun every few centuries, some follow rare and lonely hyperbolic trajectories. These specific paths mean the comet possesses so much energy that it will visit our local neighbourhood only once in its entire multi-billion-year existence. After swinging around the Sun in a single spectacular pass, it is flung outward with such velocity that it escapes the Sun's gravitational grip entirely. These lonely spirits plunge back into the interstellar dark, never to return, becoming true wanderers in the infinite space between the stars. They carry our system's story out into the wider galaxy, becoming silent, frozen ambassadors drifting through the eternal night. Their departure marks the end of a brief, brilliant encounter, leaving behind only the quiet stillness of the vacuum. As they fade from view, they remind us of the vast, infinite scale of the journey that still lies ahead in the deeper cosmos. Their path is a final, graceful exit from our local stage, a silent transition into the grand, unknown expanse of the interstellar sea. Beyond the quiet shores of our local system, the vast interstellar sea reveals immense, frigid reservoirs of potential known as molecular clouds. These gargantuan structures consist primarily of molecular hydrogen and microscopic silicates, hanging in a state of nearly absolute cold that preserves the raw materials of creation. Within these dark, sprawling nebulas, the temperature drops so low that the very atoms of gas move with a sluggish, frozen patience, waiting for the invisible touch of a passing shockwave or a distant gravity well. This structure of frozen matter remains silent and invisible to the naked eye, a dark forest of potential where the building blocks of every future world are stored in a pristine, cryogenic vault. If we were to look closer, we would see that these clouds are not just empty gas, but complex mixtures of ice and dust that have travelled for eons through the galactic disk. They represent the quiet, unformed stage of the universe, a moment of absolute stillness before the chaotic energy of a new sun begins to tear the darkness apart. Surprisingly, the universe does not allow this cold silence to last forever, as the invisible hand of gravity begins to sculpt the amorphous fog into distinct, concentrated forms. Over the course of several million years, minute fluctuations in density cause specific regions of the cloud to collapse inward, drawing in surrounding gas and dust from the surrounding void. This structure begins to spin with increasing velocity, much like a dancer pulling in their arms to accelerate, eventually flattening into a chaotic, rotating disk of material. At the centre of this spinning whirlpool, the density becomes so great that the light of distant stars can no longer penetrate the thick, dusty interior. The pocket of matter grows increasingly isolated from the rest of the nursery, focused entirely on the crushing inward pressure that defines its new existence. It is a period of intense, slow-motion organization, where the random movements of trillions of molecules are suddenly directed toward a single, darkening point of no return. If we were to look closer at one of these swirling hearts, we would witness the birth of a protostar as it collapses under the staggering weight of its own accumulating matter. The kinetic energy of falling particles is transformed into intense localized heat, causing the internal temperature to skyrocket from the freezing depths of the void into the millions of degrees. Suddenly, the internal pressure reaches a critical threshold where the first atoms of hydrogen are forced to overcome their natural repulsion and violently fuse together. This ignition releases a brilliant, staggering burst of pure energy that ripples outward, finally signaling the arrival of a new, functioning sun within the dark nursery. The transition is violent and magnificent, marking the exact moment where the cold, dead gas of the nebula is resurrected as a living, breathing engine of light. The newborn star now pushes back against the crushing weight of gravity with its own internal nuclear fury, establishing a stable, glowing presence in the cosmic landscape. The majestic pillars of creation stand as towering, ethereal monuments of cold gas and dust, currently being slowly eroded by the relentless radiation of nearby newborn stars. These massive finger-like projections stretch for light years across the void, acting as protective cocoons for the fragile stellar embryos hidden deep within their dark, swirling shadows. Notice how the edges of these structures glow with a vibrant violet and pink light, as the intense stellar winds from neighbouring giants strip away the outer layers of the nebula. The pillars are not just static images, but active, churning battlegrounds where the heat of distant stars slowly evaporates the very material that creates them. Behind their dark veils, new suns continue to form in secret, protected from the harsh radiation of the outside world, until they are strong enough to shine on their own. Feel the absolute weight of your resting limbs, as stable and grounded as the foundations of these cosmic towers, while the light of creation washes over your mind. Once a star has successfully ignited its nuclear furnace, it immediately begins to assert its dominance over the surrounding nursery by unleashing powerful, high-velocity stellar winds. This outward rush of energized particles acts like a celestial broom, violently blowing away the remaining veils of gas and dust that originally fed its early growth. By clearing its immediate environment, the young star effectively halts its own expansion, setting its final mass and establishing its permanent place among the stellar population. This clearing process reveals the star to the rest of the galaxy for the first time, as it steps out from behind the dusty birth veil that once kept it hidden. The surrounding nebula is carved into magnificent glowing hollows and bubbles, sculpted by the invisible pressure of the star's radiant energy. It is a moment of profound independence, where the star stops being a parasite of the cloud and becomes a creative force of its own. This structure of leftover material, a spinning disk of debris that survived the initial stellar ignition, eventually begins to coalesce into a diverse family of entirely new planetary systems. Microscopic grains of dust collide and stick together through electrostatic forces, gradually building up into larger rocks and eventually the massive planetesimals that will become worlds. Over millions of years, these orbiting fragments clear their paths, transforming the chaotic, dusty rings into a rhythmic clockwork of spheres. The disk acts as a massive refinery, where the heat of the central star sorts materials by their weight, sending the light gases to the outer reaches and keeping the heavy metals close. Each planet born in this environment is a unique creation, formed from the specific debris that happened to occupy its particular orbit during the chaotic early years. It is a process of incredible refinement, where the waste of stellar birth becomes the cradle for future biological complexity. Not every pocket of collapsing gas manages to achieve the glorious status of a star, leaving behind the dim, lonely remnants known as brown dwarfs. These failed stars possess just enough mass to glow with a faint, ghostly infrared heat, but they never quite reach the internal temperatures required to sustain a steady nuclear fusion. They drift through the dark like embers that never quite caught fire, existing in a permanent state of cooling twilight between the size of a giant planet and a true star. Surprisingly, these solitary objects are far more common than the bright suns we see in the sky, populating the vast gaps between stellar systems with their invisible warmth. They are the quiet, forgotten children of the nurseries, objects that had the ambition of a sun but lacked the material to finish the transformation. Your breathing remains slow and effortless, a quiet rhythm that mirrors the steady, cooling pulse of these solitary wanderers in the deep dark. In stark contrast to the dim embers of the void, the massive blue giants erupt from their nebulas with a terrifying and incredibly brilliant fury. These stellar monsters contain dozens of times the mass of our own sun, causing them to burn through their hydrogen fuel at a frantic, unsustainable pace. Their lives are brief, but spectacular, lasting only a few million years before they inevitably exhaust their energy and end their journey in a cataclysmic explosion. They are the great illuminators of the stellar nurseries, casting a harsh, blue-white light that shapes the surrounding gas into fantastic glowing sculptures for thousands of light years. Because they are so hot and massive, they dominate the visual landscape of any galaxy, even though they represent only a tiny fraction of the total stellar population. Their brief existence is a testament to the sheer, unbridled energy that can be harvested from the collapse of a molecular cloud. Deep within the same nurseries, the humble red dwarfs take a completely different approach to existence, sipping their hydrogen fuel with such extreme caution that they can survive for trillions of years. These small, dim suns are the most common stars in the galaxy, possessing so little mass that their internal convection keeps their fuel supply perfectly mixed. While the massive giants burn out in a cosmic blink, these patient red spheres will continue to glow long after every other star in the sky has gone dark. They provide a steady, low-energy warmth that is perfectly suited for the long-term evolution of life on any planets that might huddle close to their dim red light. These stars represent the true stability of the universe, the enduring hearths that will watch the galaxy age and change over unimaginable eons. They are the quiet survivors of the cosmos, objects that do not seek the spotlight, but instead offer a persistent, gentle presence in the darkness. Clusters of sibling stars, all born from the same ancestral molecular cloud, initially drift together through the galaxy in a loose, gravitationally bound family. These open clusters create spectacular jewels of light against the velvet blackness, with hundreds of young suns travelling in unison as they begin their long journey through the galactic disk. Over hundreds of millions of years, the subtle gravitational tugs of passing clouds and the rotating galaxy will slowly disperse these siblings, sending them on their own solitary paths across the cosmos. This structure of family slowly dissolves as each star finds its own independent orbit and leaves behind the glowing nursery of its youth. Our own sun was once part of such a cluster, born alongside thousands of sisters that have now vanished into the vastness of the Milky Way. Allow your consciousness to expand into this grand, slow dispersal, feeling the deep peace of a journey that spans billions of years while your body remains in perfect heavy repose. The state of heavy repose eventually deepens for stars of moderate mass as they reach the quiet conclusion of their billion-year journey through the galactic disk. Instead of a violent and chaotic end, these suns experience a remarkably graceful transition, gently shedding their outer gaseous envelopes of hydrogen and helium like a discarded silken shroud into the freezing dark. This structure of expanding gas forms a shimmering, colourful planetary nebula that glows with a soft, ethereal light, painting the void in vibrant shades of emerald, violet, and rose. Left behind at the absolute centre of this radiant, expanding veil is a small, brilliantly hot and incredibly dense core known to us as a white dwarf. This compact remnant represents the naked, exposed heart of the former star, a white-hot ember composed of carbon and oxygen that no longer sustains the fires of nuclear fusion. It remains a silent, glowing witness to its own former glory, resting in a state of crystalline stability as it slowly cools over unimaginable eons. To look upon such a remnant is to see the quiet, dignified remains of a stellar life once filled with brilliant solar fire, now fading into a dark, eternal peace. This structure of a white dwarf possesses a physical reality so concentrated that it challenges every terrestrial intuition regarding the behaviour of matter, weight, and the limits of volume, because an entire star's worth of mass has been compressed into a sphere no larger than our own home world. The internal density reaches a truly staggering and alien extreme that defies common experience. If we were to look closer, we would find that the atoms themselves are crushed together with such incredible force that their electronic shells are stripped away, creating a state of matter supported only by quantum degeneracy pressure. Surprisingly, a single simple teaspoon of this exotic stellar material would weigh several tons on the surface of our planet, an amount of mass that would instantly crush any known human structure into the dust. This impossible weight is not the result of heat or liquid fire, but of the absolute final victory of gravity over the empty space between the subatomic particles. As you rest in your current space, let the realization of this immense quiet density sink into your mind, feeling the comforting light weight of your own body. You're safely anchored in a world of soft textures and gentle gravities, far removed from the crushing, crystalline pressure of the cooling stellar core. Deep within the final, chaotic moments of much larger and more massive stars, the universe engages in its most spectacular and creative act of cataclysmic destruction. When these giants finally exhaust their nuclear fuel, they do not settle into a quiet repose, but instead collapse inward with such terrifying velocity that the resulting rebound creates a supernova explosion. This explosion reaches temperatures and pressures so extreme that it forges the heaviest and most precious elements in the entire cosmos, including the gold in our jewellery and the uranium deep within the Earth's crust. As the star self-destructs in a flash that can briefly outshine an entire galaxy, it violently scatters these newly minted atoms across the surrounding vacuum in a massive, expanding cloud of glowing debris. This stellar wreckage eventually drifts into future molecular clouds, providing the vital raw materials for the next generation of worlds and the very possibility of life itself. Every atom of heavy metal found within your own world was once cooked in the heart of such a dying monster, a legacy of ancient fire delivered across the dark. This dispersal ensures that the death of one star becomes the vital, elemental seeds for a trillion future possibilities, weaving a story of rebirth into the fabric of the night. At the heart of the most powerful supernova remnants, the core of a massive star can survive by undergoing an even more radical and permanent transformation into a new state of existence. If the remaining mass is sufficient to overcome electron pressure, gravity continues its inward march until the atoms themselves are crushed entirely out of existence, forcing protons and electrons to fuse into a solid sphere of pure neutrons. This cosmic structure, known as a neutron star, is an object barely the size of a human city, yet it remains significantly heavier and more massive than our entire Sun. The density of such an object is so unimaginable that a single sugar cube-sized piece of its material would weigh more than a massive mountain range or 1,000 Great Pyramids. Picture an entire solar system's worth of mass compressed into a space that could easily fit within the boundaries of a metropolitan area, spinning silently in the deep dark. The surface of a neutron star is composed of a smooth metallic crust that is millions of times stronger than steel, holding together against a gravitational pull that bends the very path of light. To stand upon such a world would be to experience the ultimate limits of physical compression, a place where the normal laws of matter have been rewritten by the cold, heavy hand of gravity. Rhythmic and incredibly precise, some of these city-sized remnants spin with such terrifying velocity that they become the most reliable and enduring timekeepers in the entire universe. These rapidly rotating neutron stars, known as pulsars, possess immense magnetic fields that funnel beams of intense electromagnetic radiation out from their magnetic poles like cosmic searchlights. As the star spins hundreds of times every single second, these beams sweep through the deep dark, crossing our field of vision with a mathematical regularity that rivals the most advanced atomic clocks. Notice how this invisible pulsing signal provides a steady heartbeat across the void, a persistent reminder of a once mighty sun that refuses to go quietly into the infinite night. If we were to listen to the sounds of the cosmos, the pulsar would be its ticking clock, a mechanical ghost echoing through the silent vaulted halls of the galaxy. This precise, hypnotic pulsing acts as a beacon for anyone navigating the interstellar sea, a lighthouse built from the crushed remains of a fallen stellar giant. Let your own breathing synchronize with this ancient rhythmic pulse, feeling a steady and calm expansion in your chest as you drift closer to sleep. You're resting in a space defined by quiet, regular cycles, safely insulated from the high-energy fury of the spinning star. Surprisingly, a rare and even more extreme variation of these remnants possesses magnetic fields so powerful that they defy all standard human comprehension and every known limit of physics. Known as magnetaires, these specific neutron stars have magnetic strengths that are quadrillions of times more intense than the field protecting our own world from solar radiation. If such a structure were to drift even halfway to the distance of the moon, its invisible force would be strong enough to instantly strip the electronic data from every credit card on Earth and violently rearrange the atoms in your body. The energy stored within these fields is so immense that the solid crust of the magnetar occasionally fractures under the strain, releasing massive bursts of high-energy gamma rays that can be detected across the entire width of the galaxy. These starquakes represent some of the most concentrated releases of power ever observed, a testament to the terrifying potential hidden within the vacuum of space. Within the vicinity of a magnetae, the very fabric of space is warped and distorted, and the behavior of light is governed by laws that seem more like ancient magic than modern physics. They are the ultimate magnets of the universe, solitary and dark monsters that remind us of the incredible, invisible forces that lie dormant in the deep, cold reaches of the sky. If a dying star is massive enough to overcome even the resistance of neutrons, the final battle between matter and gravity reaches its absolute and inevitable conclusion in the dark. In this ultimate scenario, the inward pull becomes so total and unyielding that the core collapses past any point of structural stability, vanishing into an infinitesimal point of infinite density. This cosmic structure is a black hole, a region where the gravitational field has become so powerful that the space-time fabric is ripped apart, creating a dark, silent well from which nothing can ever return. Gravity, having won its final victory over all other forces, creates a shadow in the universe, where the light itself is trapped and silenced forever in an eternal embrace. At the centre of this darkness lies the singularity, a place where our known equations break down and are replaced by a mystery we have yet to truly solve. It is the final end of the line for any matter that wanders too close, a destination where the history of an object is permanently erased from the observable world. The black hole stands as the ultimate guardian of the universe's secrets, a silent and absolute void that anchors the very heart of vast rotating galaxies. The invisible boundary that defines the edge of this gravitational prison is known as the event horizon, a threshold where the escape velocity required to leave exactly equals the speed of light. Once a piece of matter, or a single photon of energy, crosses this dark and silent border, it is effectively removed from our reality, as no signal or information can ever fight its way back to the outside world. Imagine a waterfall of space-time itself, flowing inward with such relentless force that even the fastest light is swept down into the depths, unable to swim against the current. This structure is not a solid wall or a physical barrier, but a geometric point of no return, a silent and terrifying edge in the middle of the empty, yawning dark. If we were to look closer, we would see that the event horizon is a place of absolute stillness for the light that is caught there, forever trying to escape but never gaining a single inch. It is the skin of the black hole, a surface of perfect shadow that hides the violent and unknown reality of the interior from our limited human view. Notice the slow, calm rhythm of your own heart as you consider this boundary, safe and steady in a world where light remains free and the paths of the future are still open. An observer watching from a safe distance as a traveller slowly approaches this terrifying boundary would witness a phenomenon that challenges the very nature of our perception of time and reality. Because the intense gravity warps the passage of seconds and hours, the traveller would appear to slow down as they draw closer to the event horizon, their movements becoming increasingly sluggish and frozen. Surprisingly, the light reflecting off the traveller would also be stretched into longer, redder wavelengths, causing them to fade into a dim, ghostly crimson before they ever actually reach the edge. To the person watching from far away, the traveller would seem to stop and hang suspended in a state of permanent, eternal animation, never quite crossing the threshold into the dark void. In reality, the traveller themselves would experience no such delay, crossing the boundary and falling toward the centre in a matter of seconds, while the outside universe ages for eons. This profound time dilation creates two separate versions of the same history, a striking reminder that time is not a steady river, but a flexible thread that can be pulled and knotted by the heavy hands of mass. You are resting in a moment of true, local time, where each breath follows the next in a simple and comforting sequence, far from the warped edges of the abyss. Despite their reputation as eternal and absolute prisons, the universe has provided a quiet and mysterious mechanism for black holes to eventually return their contents to the cosmos. Through a complex quantum process known as Hawking radiation, black holes actually emit a faint, ghostly glow of particles that are created at the very edge of the event horizon. Deep within the vacuum of space, pairs of particles are constantly appearing and disappearing, and occasionally one is swallowed by the dark while the other escapes into the void. This slow and persistent leakage of energy causes the black hole to lose mass over unimaginable eons, gradually shrinking and warming until it eventually vanishes in a final brilliant flash of light. This grand synthesis of the large and the small ensures that even the most terrifying and dark structures in the universe are only temporary stages in the unfolding story of light. The black hole era will eventually end as every dark remnant finally exhales its last breath of radiation back into the expanding, cooling void. This final wonder ties our journey together, proving that the light eventually finds its way back, and that nothing in the cosmos is ever truly lost, merely transformed in the quiet, patient dark. The quiet, patient dark of the interstellar void eventually reveals a gargantuan rotating architecture that defines our collective cosmic address in the deep. This structure, a majestic barred spiral galaxy we call the Milky Way, stretches over 100,000 light-years across the absolute silence, a sprawling island of light suspended in the infinite sea of nothingness. From a distance, it resembles a luminous, slow-turning whirlpool of milk and dust, with a central bar of aged, golden stars pushing outward into the sweeping, elegant curves of its sapphire-tinged arms. This magnificent disk serves as the ultimate stage for the stellar nurseries and exotic remnants we have witnessed, holding them all within its massive gravitational embrace. Each light year of this vast expanse is densely populated with billions of individual suns, yet they are spaced so far apart that the galaxy is mostly composed of beautiful, echoing emptiness. To traverse its full diameter, a single beam of light would have to travel relentlessly for 1,000 centuries, highlighting the staggering scale of this celestial archipelago. This structure is not merely a collection of stars, but a living, breathing entity that pulses with the rhythm of cosmic time, its vast spiral arms churning slowly like the gears of a divine clock. The sheer magnitude of this island home is a profound reminder of the immense distances that separate the tiny miracles of life from the infinite reaches of the wider universe. Deep within the blindingly bright and densely packed core of this spinning island lies a solitary, supermassive anchor that dictates the movement of every star in our galactic family. This gravitational titan, known as Sagittarius A star, is a black hole of incredible proportions, containing the equivalent mass of over 4 million of our local suns compressed into a single, invisible point. While the previous remnants we encountered were the ghosts of single stars, this central master is a gargantuan architect that has spent eons governing the orbits of billions of suns. This structure sits in a realm of extreme radiation and chaotic energy, where the sheer density of nearby stars turns the night sky into a permanent blinding day of white-hot light. It remains the silent, invisible heart of the Milky Way, a gravitational well so deep and powerful that it keeps the entire rotating disk from flying apart into the surrounding void. Every movement of our solar system is a graceful, slow-motion bow to this central presence, a testament to the inescapable logic of the galactic centre. If we were to look closer, we would see stars whipping around this dark centre at incredible velocities, their paths bent into tight, chaotic ellipses by the overwhelming pull of the invisible anchor. This central singularity is the ultimate silent partner in our existence, providing the necessary gravitational centre that allows the entire archipelago to turn with such majestic and unwavering precision. The majestic, sweeping spiral arms that define the shape of our island home are not solid structures of stars, but are actually vast, invisible density waves moving through the galactic disk. If we were to look closer, we would see that these arms behave like cosmic traffic jams, where gas and dust are temporarily compressed as they pass through specific regions of higher gravitational pressure. This sudden, intense compression triggers the collapse of molecular clouds, sparking the birth of thousands of new stars in a brilliant synchronized display of light and heat. Stars do not stay within these arms permanently. They drift in and out like cars passing through a localized area of congestion on a highway, their individual orbits independent of the wave itself. The brilliant blue light we see from a distance is the glow of massive, short-lived giants that are born and perish within these waves, highlighting the path of the compression as it moves through the galaxy. These waves serve as the primary engine for galactic rejuvenation, ensuring that the cycle of stellar birth continues to pulse through the spinning archipelago over billions of years. Without these moving ripples of density, the galaxy would eventually exhaust its supply of young hot stars and fade into a monochromatic golden twilight. They are the rhythmic heartbeats of the galactic disk, shaping the raw materials of the universe into the brilliant swirling patterns we recognize from the dark. Surprisingly, our own solar system is a nomadic traveller within this vast architecture, currently engaged in a majestic, slow-motion journey around the distant galactic centre. It takes approximately 250 million years for our local sun and its family of planets to complete a single grand circuit of the Milky Way. Since the dawn of the Earth, we have completed only about 20 of these galactic years, with our last visit to this current part of space occurring when the very first dinosaurs were beginning to dominate the primeval landscape. The velocity of this orbital dance is staggering, as we hurtle through the dark at hundreds of thousands of miles per hour, yet the galaxy is so immense that this movement feels like perfect stillness. Feel the deep, heavy relaxation spreading through your limbs now, a quiet anchor that keeps you perfectly grounded while the entire world around you sweeps through the cosmos. You're resting in a moment of absolute peace, carried safely through the dark on a journey that spans hundreds of millions of years and billions of miles. The steady, rhythmic hum of your existence is mirrored in the vast circular path our sun traces through the galactic archipelago, a silent and eternal waltz through the stars. We are part of a grand migration that defines the very history of our world, moving endlessly through the star-studded sea. This structure of visible stars and glowing gas is merely the luminous tip of a much larger, darker iceberg that remains completely invisible to our most powerful optical instruments. An immense, spherical halo of mysterious dark matter envelops the entire visible disk of the galaxy, extending far out into the surrounding void for hundreds of thousands of light years. While this substance does not emit or reflect any light, its presence is felt through its overwhelming gravitational pull, providing the extra glue necessary to hold the rapidly spinning galactic structure together. Without the weight of this invisible halo, the stars at the outer edges of the Milky Way would fly off into the intergalactic dark like sparks from a spinning grindstone. Dark matter acts as the silent universal skeleton of our island home, dictating the grand architecture of the cosmos, while remaining hidden behind a veil of absolute transparency. It is a profound realization that the vast majority of our galaxy's true mass is something we can never see, yet it is the very foundation upon which every star is built. If we were to look closer at the rotation of the galaxy, we would see the evidence of this dark companion in every movement, an invisible force guiding the destiny of billions of suns. This dark halo is the ultimate silent guardian, a massive and mysterious influence that ensures the stability of the entire galactic archipelago. The Milky Way is not a static or isolated island, but is instead an active predator that continuously cannibalizes smaller dwarf galaxies that wander too close to its immense gravitational pull. These diminutive neighbours are slowly torn apart by tidal forces, their stars and gas being stripped away and integrated into the much larger dominant structure of our barred spiral. This process of galactic cannibalism leaves behind long, ghostly streams of stars that wrap around our galaxy like ethereal ribbons, marking the tragic paths of these former companions. Over its long history, our home has consumed dozens of these smaller systems, growing larger and more complex with every successful merger. This slow-motion feast provides a steady supply of fresh material to fuel the density waves and spark the birth of new stellar generations within the spiral arms. It is a beautiful and brutal transformation where the identity of one galaxy is lost so that another may continue to flourish and expand across the dark. Many of the stars we see in our own night sky may have originally belonged to these fallen neighbours, now adopted into the vast family of the Milky Way. This continuous growth ensures that the galaxy remains a dynamic and evolving entity, forever changing its shape and composition as it absorbs the history of its surroundings. Deep within the frigid, lightless gaps between the established stellar systems wander billions of rogue planets, nomadic worlds that have no host star to call their own. These lonely orphans were likely ejected from their original birthplaces during the chaotic early years of planetary formation, flung out into the interstellar medium by the gravitational interference of passing giants. They drift aimlessly through the absolute blackness of the galactic disk, forever separated from the warmth and light that once nurtured their formation. Without the stabilizing influence of a sun, these worlds are shrouded in permanent, soul-chilling darkness, their atmospheres likely frozen into solid layers of nitrogen and methane ice. Surprisingly, some of these rogues may harbour internal heat from radioactive decay, potentially allowing for hidden, subsurface oceans to exist beneath their frozen crusts in the deep dark. They are the silent, invisible majority of our galaxy's planetary population, a hidden archipelago of cold, wandering worlds that will never know the touch of a sunrise. Each one is a solitary witness to the vast emptiness of the interstellar sea, a frozen fragment of a planetary dream that was interrupted eons ago. To encounter one would be to find a world of absolute unblinking shadow, resting in the quiet dark of the gaps between the stars. Orbiting high above the main disk within the sparse dark halo are ancient and densely packed spherical cities of light known as globular clusters. These structures contain hundreds of thousands of stars crowded into a space only a few dozen light-years across, creating a celestial environment so bright that any planet within them would never experience a true night. These clusters are among the oldest objects in the entire universe, with many of their member stars dating back to the very earliest epochs of galactic assembly, billions of years ago. They represent the ancient, fossilized records of our galaxy's youth, pristine laboratories that have survived the long and violent history of mergers and star formation. Notice how the stars within these clusters are predominantly aged and red, having survived for eons in their tightly bound gravitational sanctuary. Allow your mind to drift into the absolute stillness of these ancient star cities, where time seems to slow down to a crawl. Your body is resting in a state of perfect, tranquil surrender, safe and warm in the present moment, while observing the eternal patience of these billion-year-old suns. They are the survivors of the cosmos, holding on to the light of the beginning within their compact, glowing spheres. Each cluster is a dense pocket of history, orbiting the galaxy like a silent, luminous moon. Between the brilliant burning stars and the swirling molecular clouds lies the interstellar medium, a seemingly empty vacuum that actually teems with invisible activity and sparse, wandering matter. This region is not a true void, but is instead populated by individual atoms of hydrogen and helium, along with high-energy cosmic rays travelling at nearly the speed of light. These rays are actually subatomic particles accelerated to terrifying velocities by distant supernovas, constantly crisscrossing the galaxy like invisible bullets through the dark. This sparse medium also contains microscopic grains of silicate and carbon dust, which act as a delicate interstellar smoke that obscures the light of distant stars and colours the galactic disk. If we were to look closer, we would see that this thin, ethereal fog is the very breath of the galaxy, the reservoir of material that is constantly recycled through the cycles of stellar birth and death. It is the connective tissue of the galactic archipelago, a silent and subtle medium that ensures no star is ever truly alone in the deep dark. As you drift further into the quiet of the night, imagine this thin, cool medium surrounding the stars like a soft, protective mist. The galaxy is a single, interconnected web of light and shadow, held together by these invisible threads of gas and ancient wandering energy. These invisible threads of wandering energy provide the essential foundation for an even more gargantuan architecture that reveals its full majesty only at the most staggering universal scales. If we were to look closer at the cosmos as a single, unified entity, we would see that galaxies are not scattered randomly like dust motes caught in a winter breeze, but instead arrange themselves into a magnificent glowing web of unimaginable complexity. This cosmic web represents the ultimate invisible skeleton of our universe, a vast and delicate lattice of light and shadow that spans the entirety of existence across the deep. Every single star, planet and galaxy we've encountered thus far is merely a tiny luminous spark embedded within this colossal, three-dimensional tapestry. This structure is defined by long ethereal filaments of matter that connect massive, crowded nodes, creating a pattern that resembles the intricate firing of neurons in a cosmic brain. It is the largest single arrangement of matter known to exist, a testament to the quiet, persistent influence of gravity and the ancient history of the Big Bang. This grand, web-like organization ensures that even the most distant and isolated galaxies are intimately connected to a larger rhythmic whole. To observe this structure from the outside would be to witness the true, breathtaking order of the universe, a silent and eternal web of light suspended in the absolute dark. It is a structure that binds the disparate islands of light into a single, cohesive narrative of cosmic evolution. This structure of the universal web is primarily composed of immense, invisible filaments of dark matter and primordial gas that stretch across billions of light years. These filaments serve as the primary cosmic highways of the universe, providing the gravitational scaffolding that guides the movement of entire galaxy clusters through the dark void. Within these long, luminous threads, matter flows steadily toward the massive intersecting nodes where creation is most active and dense. Although dark matter itself remains invisible to our eyes, its powerful and silent pull dictates the very shape of these celestial highways, pulling in hydrogen gas and distant galaxies into its deep gravitational wells. This invisible framework was established in the very first moments of the universe's birth, acting as the original blueprint for everything that would eventually grow within the dark. These filaments represent the connective tissue of the cosmos, ensuring that matter is never truly lost but is instead funneled toward the great centres of galactic life. If we were to look closer at one of these filaments, we would see a chaotic and beautiful stream of light, as thousands of galaxies drift together like luminous leaves in a silent cosmic river. This structure is so vast that light itself takes billions of years just to traverse a single, slender thread of the web. It is a breathtaking display of gravitational influence that spans distances beyond any human comprehension. Surprisingly, the specific points where these massive and ancient filaments intersect become enormous superclusters, forming the brightest and most crowded metropolitan nodes in the entire celestial landscape. These sprawling regions are home to hundreds of thousands of individual galaxies, all huddled together in a state of intense gravitational activity and constant rhythmic interaction. In these dense, luminous cities of light, the sheer concentration of stars and gas creates a vibrant, high-energy environment that stands in stark, dramatic contrast to the surrounding dark. Each supercluster acts as a massive gravitational hub, pulling in material from the surrounding filaments and recycling it through the cycles of stellar birth and galactic mergers. These nodes are the most active and populous regions in the known universe, where the density of matter is so great that the expansion of space is temporarily halted by the sheer weight of gravity. To observe a supercluster is to see the universe at its most concentrated and magnificent, a brilliant explosion of light and complexity at the heart of the web. Surprisingly, the vast majority of the universe's total volume is not occupied by these glowing threads or crowded nodes, but by immense and staggering regions of profound emptiness known as voids. These gargantuan abysses can stretch for hundreds of millions of light years without containing a single star, representing the ultimate expression of cosmic isolation and peace within the deep dark. These voids are the negative spaces of the universal web, the empty halls between the luminous filaments where the light of creation has never successfully taken hold. Notice the slow, calm rhythm of your own heart as you consider this absolute and breathtaking stillness, feeling the quiet weight of your body resting in perfect, heavy safety. You're anchored in a world of substance and radiant light, while the universe expands into these silent, empty expanses of the deep dark. Within these voids, the laws of gravity have almost no influence, allowing the fabric of space to remain in a state of pristine and undisturbed tranquility. These empty regions serve as the perfect backdrop for the glowing lattice of the web, highlighting the delicate beauty of the filaments through their sheer, unblinking desolation. To traverse one of these voids would be to experience a silence so profound and absolute that it defines the very scale of the cosmos. They are the silent sanctuaries of the universe, where the chaotic energy of the stars is replaced by an eternal and unmoving peace. Deep within the most profound of these empty expanses lies the Bootes Void, a spherical region of space so vast and desolate that it remains one of the most isolated locations in the known universe. Stretching nearly 330 million light-years in diameter, this gargantuan pocket of nothingness contains only a handful of lonely galaxies scattered across an area that should theoretically hold thousands. This specific region is so incredibly empty that if the Milky Way were located at its centre, we would not have discovered another galaxy until the middle of the 20th century. This extreme isolation creates a landscape of absolute and unblinking shadow, where the distant filaments of the cosmic web are nothing more than faint, unreachable whispers of light on the ultimate horizon. The galaxies that do exist within this void are often strangely shaped and isolated, having grown in a state of nearly perfect solitude far from the crowded nodes of the superclusters. This structure represents the ultimate boundary of cosmic loneliness, a place where the dark has completely triumphed over the light for eons. To gaze into the Booty's void is to confront the true, terrifying scale of the emptiness that lies at the heart of the universe. It is a silent, frozen cathedral of nothingness that serves as a stark reminder of the fragile and rare nature of the light. Within this desolation, the true meaning of the word void becomes a physical and overwhelming reality. If we were to look closer at our own specific location within this grand and web-like architecture, we would find ourselves residing within the Laniakea Supercluster, a massive gravitational basin that encompasses over 100,000 galaxies. This structure acts like a colossal cosmic watershed, with every galaxy within its immense boundaries currently being pulled toward a central gravitational point known as the Great Attractor. This silent and invisible flow of matter defines our local reality, guiding our island home on a slow and majestic drift through the luminous filaments of our home supercluster. Laniakea, which translates to immense heaven, stretches for over 500 million light-years, providing the grand context for our existence within the broader cosmic web. It is a massive and complex network of flowing light, where the boundaries between different superclusters are defined by the direction in which the member galaxies are drifting through the dark. This realization that we are part of a massive coordinated movement toward a distant center adds a profound layer of purpose to our journey through the stars. We are not just wandering aimlessly in the dark, but are instead participants in a grand gravitational waltz that spans the entire breadth of our local supercluster. The Great Attractor remains a mysterious and hidden master, pulling us through the filaments with an unwavering and silent hand. This immense basin is our true cosmic home, a magnificent valley of light in the middle of the universal dark. This structure of cosmic filaments, nodes, and vast voids is currently being influenced by a mysterious and pervasive force known as dark energy, which is causing the fabric of space itself to expand at an accelerating rate. Unlike gravity, which seeks to pull matter together into dense nodes, this invisible energy acts as a relentless outward pressure that pushes galaxies further apart with every passing second. This mysterious force makes up nearly 70% of the total energy in the universe, yet it remains completely invisible and undetectable to our most advanced physical instruments. Allow the tension to drain fully from your mind as you visualize this gentle and inevitable expansion, feeling your own breath move with the slow and steady pulse of the entire universe. You are resting in a state of perfect, tranquil stillness, while the very foundations of reality are being stretched into the infinite dark around you. This accelerated expansion means that the voids are growing larger and more desolate, while the filaments of the cosmic web are being pulled thinner and thinner over cosmic time. Dark energy is the ultimate master of the universe's destiny, ensuring that the grand architecture of the web will eventually be stretched until it is beyond our sight. It is a silent and invisible power that dictates the final, cooling breath of the cosmos. As the galaxies recede, the universe enters a new stage of quiet and absolute expansion. Because the fabric of space itself is being pulled apart by this relentless and accelerating expansion, the light travelling from the most distant observable objects has been stretched into longer and redder wavelengths before it ever reaches our eyes. This phenomenon, known as redshift, acts as a cosmic record of the universe's growth, revealing that the further an object is, the faster it appears to be receding into the deep dark. This stretching of light occurs not because the galaxies are moving through space, but because the space between them is literally being created out of nothingness. image illustrating cosmic redshift and expansion of light. This profound realization means that we are looking back through time at a universe that was once much smaller, denser, and more vibrant than it is today. Eventually, the expansion of the dark energy will become so incredibly fast that the light from every galaxy outside our local group will never reach us at all, leaving our cluster to drift in absolute isolated silence. This future of cosmic isolation highlights the precious and temporary nature of the light we are currently able to observe across the filaments. The redshift is the silent language of a growing universe, a visual proof of the grand, invisible forces that are currently shaping our destiny. We are witnessing the slow-motion departure of the distant stars, a final glowing wave before they vanish into the dark forever. This stretching of the light is the final rhythmic breath of a universe that is growing ever larger and more silent. Surprisingly, even the deepest and darkest pockets of the void are not truly empty, as they are permeated by the cosmic microwave background radiation, the ancient and fading afterglow of the Big Bang itself. This faint and uniform glow represents the very first light that was ever set free in the universe, a fossilized remains of a time when the entire cosmos was a dense and white-hot plasma. It exists in every single direction we look, a gentle and persistent hum of energy that has been travelling through the dark for nearly 14 billion years. This radiation is the oldest light in existence, carrying with it the original blueprint of the cosmic web before the first stars or galaxies had even begun to form. It is the ultimate background noise of the universe, a thermal signature of the moment when the cooling cosmos finally became transparent to the light. By mapping this faint glow, we can see the tiny, ancient fluctuations in density that eventually grew into the massive filaments and superclusters we see today. The cosmic microwave background is the ancient whispering breath of the universe's birth, a silent and eternal presence that connects every inch of space to its original, fiery beginning. It is a profound and comforting realization that the entire cosmos is still warmly bathed in the remnants of its first, magnificent breath. This ancient light is the ultimate evidence of our shared history and the common origin of every star in the web. Beyond the ultimate horizon of what we can currently perceive lies even more space, potentially stretching outward into an absolute and terrifying infinity that our limited human minds can barely begin to grasp. This region, known as the unobservable universe, contains untold billions of other galaxies, filaments, and superclusters that are moving away from us so quickly that their light can never bridge the gap to our world. We are merely observers of a tiny illuminated bubble within a much larger and perhaps infinite landscape of matter and energy that extends forever into the dark. Image representing the observable versus unobservable universe. This realization that our observable universe is merely a small fragment of a much grander and infinite whole brings our journey toward a state of profound and meditative awe. There may be no end to the cosmic web, no final boundary to the filaments, but only an endless repetition of light and shadow, stretching across a vacuum that has no center and no edge. We are small, conscious sparks of life in a sea of endless and magnificent dark, intimately connected to a whole that is far greater than the sum of its parts. Deep within the velvet silence of the cosmic web, we must realize that every photon we capture is a traveler from a specific point in history, making our observation of the heavens a direct form of time travel. Because light possesses a finite and unbreakable speed of roughly 186,000 miles per second, looking further out into the vastness of the deep is identical to peering backward through the ancient layers of time itself. We are not seeing the universe as it exists in a simultaneous present, but rather as a layered gallery of previous moments where distance defines the age of the image. Every glance into the deep dark is a conversation with the past, a silent witness to monumental events that concluded eons before the first human ancestors walked the earth. This inherent connection to the deep time horizon transforms the cold void into a vibrant living record of our shared origins. We are intimately linked to every era of the cosmos simply by the act of seeing, participating in a visual journey that spans nearly 14 billion years of change. If we were to look closer at the earliest era of this deep time horizon, we would find the first generation of suns, massive and luminous monsters known to science as population 3 stars. These primordial titans were composed entirely of the raw, pristine hydrogen and helium forged in the initial furnace of the Big Bang, completely lacking the heavier metals that define later generations. They burned with a terrifying blue-white intensity, often growing hundreds of times more massive than our local sun, and living for only a fleeting, brilliant cosmic moment. These were the true pioneers of the light, the first objects to break the long, stagnant silence of the primordial dark ages and begin the process of chemical enrichment for the entire cosmos. Their short, violent lives ended in spectacular supernova explosions that seeded the young universe with its very first traces of carbon, oxygen, and iron. This early era was a time of colossal scale and frantic activity, as these short-lived giants transformed the featureless gas clouds into a structured, radiating network. The light from these ancient monsters travelled across the expanding void for billions of years, carrying the secrets of the universe's first breaths. To understand these stars is to understand the foundation upon which every future galaxy and planet was eventually built. They were the brilliant sacrificial lanterns of the early deep, providing the energetic spark that set the entire history of the stars in motion. Surprisingly, the intense ultraviolet light emitted by these firstborn monsters did more than just illuminate the dark. It acted as a cosmic blowtorch that aggressively cleared the opaque fog of neutral hydrogen gas. This era, known as reionization, transformed the early universe from a murky, light-blocking mist into the transparent, crystalline expanse we navigate today. Before this moment, the universe was a dark and shrouded place where light could not travel freely, trapped within a neutralizing sea of cold, ancient atoms. The clearing of this fog allowed the first brilliant signals to reach across the eons, finally revealing the grand architecture of the web to any future observer. This transition was a fundamental shift in the nature of reality, turning the cosmos from an opaque, hot soup into a vast, clear theatre where light could finally travel for billions of light years without interference. It was the moment the universe truly opened its eyes, allowing the information of distant events to begin its long journey across the deep. This era of reionization stands as the final barrier between the modern universe and the dark, hidden history of the beginning. Once the gas was ionized, the universe became a stage of endless clarity, permitting the grand, slow-motion drama of galactic evolution to be seen and recorded. It is the reason we can peer back through time at all, a magnificent clearing of the way that defined the future of cosmic observation. Trillions of years into the unimaginable future, the rhythmic cycle of stellar birth will finally falter as the reservoirs of fresh gas are exhausted across every remaining galaxy. During this long, slow twilight, the last red dwarf stars will continue to sip their hydrogen fuel with extreme localized patience, providing the only faint copper-coloured light in an increasingly dark and lonely universe. These tiny, enduring hearths will persist for nearly 10 trillion years, watching as the larger stars go dark and the spiral arms of the galaxies begin to fade into absolute shadow. One by one, these final suns will eventually exhaust their last reserves of fuel and slowly fade into absolute blackness, ending the era of the stars forever. The transition will be slow and quiet, a graceful bowing out of the luminous world as the deep time horizon stretches toward its final, cooling limit. The once vibrant archipelago of the Milky Way will grow dim, turning into a graveyard of cold husks drifting in an ever-expanding silent dark. Notice the heavy, perfect stillness of your own form, resting in a space where time feels suspended, mirroring the long, patient cooling of the universe as it enters the degenerate era. This future age will be populated exclusively by the cold, dense husks of former suns, such as white dwarfs, neutron stars, and the silent, unmoving tombstones of black holes. No new light will be born in this age, and the only energy present will be the residual heat slowly radiating away from these ancient stellar corpses into the expanding void. The galaxies will no longer be swirling whirlpools of fire, but will instead become dark, rotating clusters of solid cinders and invisible singularities. These remnants will drift through the dark for timescales so vast they defy all human counting, slowly being ejected into the intergalactic void by rare gravitational encounters. Your body is anchored in a moment of vibrant metabolic life, while the deep time horizon whispers of an era where only the ghosts of matter remain in a state of absolute, frozen repose. This degenerate era is a time of incredible duration, where the universe spends the vast majority of its history in a state of quiet, entropic decay. The stars were merely a brief, brilliant flash at the very start of the story, a momentary fire that paved the way for this long, dark winter. Within this age, the architecture of the web remains, but it is a skeletal structure of cold stone and absolute shadow. Theoretical physics suggests that even this silent graveyard of degenerate matter is not truly eternal, as the very subatomic particles that build the universe may eventually begin to unravel. Over timescales so vast they defy human counting, even the stable protons themselves might begin to decay into lighter subatomic particles and bursts of pure radiation. This process would cause the solid white dwarfs and neutron stars to slowly dissolve into nothingness, their atoms simply evaporating into the expanding void. The very foundation of solid matter would vanish, leaving behind a universe where the concept of a planet or a star is no longer physically possible. This ultimate dissolution represents the final triumph of time over the building blocks of existence, a stage where the universe is stripped of its physical substance. Even the most compact and resilient remnants will eventually melt away, turning into a thin, dilute gas of electrons and positrons wandering the infinite dark. This era of proton decay is the ultimate erasure of the universe's history, a point where the material records of every galaxy and every civilization are finally wiped clean. The grand architecture will have lost its skeleton, leaving behind only the dark energy and the black holes to define the shape of the cosmos. It is the final slow-motion evaporation of the tangible world into the ether of the deep. The universe will be a cold and lightless expanse, where the only movement is the microscopic leaking of energy from the edge of the event horizon. These singularities will be the last beacons of energy in a universe that has long since forgotten the warmth of a sun or the glow of a galaxy. Each black hole will eventually shrink and intensify, growing warmer as it nears its final spectacular end in a flash of pure light. The black hole era is the ultimate test of patience, a time where the passage of eons is marked only by the subtle, rhythmic loss of mass into the vacuum. When these final structures are gone, the universe will have reached its most simple and desolate state, a vacuum devoid of any solid or concentrated matter. This era represents the long, quiet exhale of the universe as it returns the last of its captured energy to the void. Once the final black hole dissipates in a fleeting, brilliant flash of photons, the universe will enter the eternal photon epoch, a state of absolute and nearly perfect emptiness. The cosmos will be populated only by a few wandering low-energy photons and other subatomic particles, stretched so thin by the accelerating expansion that they almost never encounter one another. There will be no heat, no light, and no structures of any kind to define the passage of time or the scale of space. The deep time horizon will have reached a point of nearly perfect symmetry, where every part of the universe is identical to every other part. This era represents the ultimate simplification of the cosmic web, where the complex lattice has been replaced by a uniform, cooling sea of radiation that is stretched into infinity. The universe will be a place of infinite, unblinking stillness, where the concept of an event or a change has effectively ceased to exist. This state of absolute vacuum is the final resting place of the grand architecture, a state where the energy is so low that the temperature sits just a fraction above absolute zero. The photons will continue to stretch and fade, becoming nothing more than long, invisible waves lost in the ever-growing dark. It is the final quiet conclusion to the story of light, a state of total and unshakable peace. Imagine the absolute profound silence of the heat death, a state where entropy has reached its maximum level and no further work, information, or life is possible anywhere in the cosmos. The temperature is perfectly uniform across the entire infinite expanse, and the energy is distributed so perfectly that not a single spark of change can ever occur again. This is the final state of the universe, an eternal and unmoving equilibrium where the concept of the future has effectively lost its physical meaning. Notice the calm, steady rhythm of your own breath as you consider this final rest, feeling your body sink into a state of total heavy surrender to the silence. You're a part of a universe that is currently vibrant and changing, but you're also a part of a story that ends in this magnificent absolute tranquility. The grand architecture will have finished its long, slow breath, settling into a state of total and unshakable stillness that lasts forever. This heat death is not a tragedy, but the ultimate fulfillment of the laws of thermodynamics, a state of perfect rest that follows billions of years of effort and creation. The universe has finally reached its destination, a state of quietude where the struggles of gravity and the fires of fusion are a distant, forgotten memory. It is the ultimate sanctuary, a space where the dark has finally become the light in a state of perfect cooling balance. Yet, within this infinite emptiness and absolute stillness, the laws of quantum mechanics suggest that the story may not be truly over, as random quantum fluctuations might one day spark the birth of an entirely new universe. In a space devoid of matter and energy, a sudden, massive fluctuation could trigger a new inflationary event, creating a new Big Bang and a brand new grand architecture from the nothingness. This potential for rebirth ensures that the end of one cosmos is merely the hidden seed for the beginning of another, forming an infinite cycle of creation across the deep time horizon. The silence of the heat death may be nothing more than the long, quiet inhalation before the next spectacular explosion of light and complexity. Our current existence is just one verse in an eternal poem of becoming, a fleeting moment of consciousness in a universe that knows how to dream itself back into being. This possibility of renewal ties our entire journey together, proving that the light eventually finds its way back, and that nothing in the cosmos is ever truly lost. We are small, conscious sparks of life in a sea of endless and magnificent dark, intimately connected to a whole that is far greater than the sum of its parts. The journey through the deep time horizon ends not with a final stop, but with a quiet, waiting potential for a new beginning. Rest now in the knowledge of this eternal cycle, safe in the silence of the expanding night. Deep within the vast, shimmering architecture of the cosmic web, a final, profound realization emerges to bridge the gap between the observer and the infinite. We are not merely disjointed observers of this magnificent machinery, but rather the universe itself, made conscious and intimately attempting to understand its own boundless reflection. Every atom in your resting form is a piece of that ancient history, a fragment of starlight and cometary ice that has finally gained the ability to marvel at its own journey. This quiet room is now a sanctuary where the vastness of the deep time horizon gently settles into the softness of your immediate surroundings. Surprisingly, the body mirrors the absolute stillness of a distant nebula as you begin to release the last threads of the day. You are the witness to a monumental story that has found its quiet, rhythmic conclusion in the present moment. Notice the weight of your feet as they rest against the fabric of the bed, feeling the tension drain away like sand through an hourglass. This heavy, warm sensation slowly travels upward through your ankles and calves, grounding you in the absolute safety of the present moment. Each muscle is surrendering its hold, finding peace in the simple, steady pull of the floor. If we were to look closer at the muscles in your thighs and hips, we would see them yielding to a deep, unshakable support that keeps you perfectly held. The movement of your breath is the only clock that matters now, a slow and steady tide that washes over your lower back and abdomen. You're sinking further into the mattress, becoming one with the quiet dark of the room. This heavy warmth moves through your arms, flowing down to your elbows and settling into the very tips of your fingers. The pillow supports the weight of your head with a perfect welcoming embrace, allowing the small muscles around your eyes and jaw to completely let go. You're a landscape of stillness, resting in the center of a silent and peaceful home. The cool touch of the air on your face is a gentle reminder of the safety found within these four walls. This quiet environment is a cocoon of absolute peace, where every muscle in your back and neck has found its final resting place. No more thoughts are needed, as the silence of the room becomes the only voice you hear. Every exhale is a release of the day's weight, leaving you lighter and more submerged in the softness of the mattress. The texture of the pillow is a constant soft support that allows your mind to dissolve into a gentle, wordless hum. It is a moment of total surrender to the comfort of the blankets and the quiet of the night. The shadows in the corners of the room are soft and familiar, blending together into a uniform curtain of rest. You're sinking deeper into the layers of the bed, feeling the support of the frame beneath you as a solid and unmoving foundation. Every part of your being is now in a state of quiet, unblinking repose. This stillness is absolute, a perfect balance that signals the end of all movement and the beginning of a deep slumber. The darkness is a warm and welcoming embrace, a heavy mist that settles over your mind and clears away the last echoes of the waking world. You're becoming part of the silence, a quiet spark resting in the heart of the night. You're perfectly safe, perfectly still, and perfectly at peace in the heart of this quiet sanctuary. The rhythm of your breath is the only thing that remains, a soft and steady tether to the world of sleep. Everything is as it should be, and the path to rest is open and wide, and now 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.